Chilling tales for dark nights.
Want to make sure you never miss a Chilling Tales for Dark Nights video again? Be sure to subscribe and hit that bell to turn on notifications. This episode of Chilling Tales for Dark Nights is brought to you by Dipsy. Calling all romance lovers. I know there's a lot going on in the world right now, but you've forgotten your first love. It's time to take a break from all the doom scrolling and sensationalized news pieces and just enjoy yourself for a while. Dipsy is a female-founded app designed to deliver spicy, bite-sized, and captivating romance stories to help you slip out of reality whenever you need to unwind. On your commute, on your lunch break, or any time at all, Dipsy gives you that discreet little escape hatch you need. Over 1,000 spicy audiobooks and more, crafted by their professional team of writers and top-notch narrators. For listeners of the show, Dipsy is offering an extended 30-day free trial when you go to dipsystories.com/chilling. That's 30 days of full access for free when you go to dipseastories.com/chilling. dipsystories.com/chilling. It's time to turn off the lights and turn on the dark.
Chilling tales for dark nights.
Good evening, friends, and welcome to another unforgettable night of terror on Chilling Tales for Dark Nights. I'm your host, Steve Taylor, here to guide you through an evening of spine-tingling tales that will remind you why it's often better not to look too closely into the shadows. Before we begin, don't forget to show your support by leaving us a 5-star review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening. If you're tuning in on YouTube, give this video a thumbs up, leave a comment, and hit that subscribe button and bell icon to stay updated on all of our latest releases. And for those who crave even more chills, visit chillingtalesfordarknights.com to become a patron and enjoy our content ad-free. Your support keeps the horror alive. Thank you. Now, let's turn off the lights and turn on the dark. Tonight, we return to the sinister saga of Farmerville by Marty Martin, an ongoing series that has gripped listeners with its blend of mystery, suspense, and supernatural intrigue. Previously featured in episodes number 270, 280, 288, 298, and 308, the Farmerville series explores the dark secrets of a cursed town where every shadow holds a story and every truth comes with a price. Tonight, we present part 6 and 7, beginning with Trouble with Kelly, where secrets unravel and the supernatural takes a chilling turn. Without further ado, let's dive back into the ominous world of Farmerville.
Content and trigger warning advisory. Farmerville episodes are not for the prudish or faint of heart and are suggested for readers and listeners 18 years of age and older. Episodes contain sensitive subject matter and elements that make references to alcohol and drug consumption, brutality, crude language, death, domestic abuse, flashbacks, haunting, kidnapping, mental illness, murder, nudity, racism, religion, sexual assault, sexual situations, suicide, supernatural, trauma, and violence. Our narrator. We have passed the halfway point of our story that so far has an accumulated body count of 20, not including the victims of the serial killing Holcomb family. We asked you in the beginning what you believe in. We've just learned something about Kelly and are about to learn more secrets, more unknowns, and discover something that Ron and Kelly find unbelievable, insane, or maybe even touching on the supernatural. If you believe in those kinds of things. Let's not forget about the Holcomb's videos and the child porn investigation involving Danny's dad. The cleanup. An exuberant Kelly sprang up yelling, "I love this shit! I love it!" After Kelly headed home, Ron walked inside the house. At first, he didn't think much about the situation and believed Kelly and what she said she had to do. Ron gave himself a tour of the house. He returned to the living room and walked over to Sarah's body by the front door and glanced down at her. Why'd she shoot her 3 times? It was odd. He knew Kelly was an excellent shot. As he looked at Sarah, he noticed a blotch on her forehead and took a closer look. There was no question in Ron's mind. It was a burn from a hot gun barrel. Ron's mind raced. No, Kelly. He knew a cleanup team was on the way and things would be taken care of, but he was anxious to get home to talk to Kelly. He knew he probably wouldn't have time because he might be called to help take care of Sarah's husband. When the cleanup team arrived, Ron asked them to lock up and to leave the key in the lockbox. As he was leaving, he received a call from Mitchell, and as he anticipated, Mitchell asked him to meet her at Valkyrie. First, Ron headed home to change. Ron arrived at home around 6 o'clock and decided he had to put off talking to Kelly for now. He closed the front door and yelled out to Kelly he was in a hurry and had to go to work. Kelly had a flirtatious look as she walked toward him and put a wine glass on the coffee table. She's drunk. Kelly, I'm in a hurry. I really do gotta get to work. Oh, I'm sure we can do something in the few minutes you got. I can't. Wait, where's Laura? I gave her some money so she and Danny could go to the movies. I thought we could have some alone time. Kelly was in a good mood, happy, oddly exuberant, and wasn't going to take no for an answer. It concerned Ron. He thought her mood seemed euphoric as she knelt in front of him. Good idea, but I really don't have time, baby, he told her. Kelly wasn't taking no for an answer. Gitmo again. Ron arrived at Valkyrie at 6:45 and met with Mitchell and Tom. A decision had been made that Sergeant Crane was going to Gitmo. Ron and Tom went through the routine of asking, "What size shoes do you wear?" They prepared Crane and waited to be told when it was time to go to the airplane. Ron and Tom were distressed with the idea of making another trip to Gitmo. Plus, Ron had other things on his mind. Ron, you okay? Yeah, I just got all this crap in my head with Fitz, Laura, and those Congress people. We just can't keep sending people to Gitmo. Yeah, man, I know what you mean. It's like every other day we're sending somebody there. This isn't supposed to be happening. They chatted for a few minutes until Kilcullen and Mitchell entered the waiting area. Kilcullen walked into the interview room. Crane jumped up to the position of attention. General Kilcullen, sir. At ease, Sergeant. Sit down, Kilcullen said with an angry tone. Frightened of Kilcullen's mood, Crane quickly sat in his chair. Sergeant Crane, you know why you're here? He glanced around as if looking for the right answer. "No, sir." "Young man, what is wrong with you? Why were you posting videos on YouTube about this place? A place where you had to get the highest security clearance there is just to work here. I don't understand why you would do something so stupid." Crane nervously answered, "Sorry, sir, that was my wife. I didn't do that." "You're in the damn videos, Sergeant, talking about what goes on here. You two were talking your asses off. I'll admit she talked a whole lot more than you, but still. Unfortunately for her, she got herself killed because of this shit, damn it." Crane looked at everyone as he started to cry, displaying an air of naivete. "Sorry, Sergeant Crane, about your wife. And there's more bad news. You've been charged with treason, and you're getting sent off to Gitmo. I hate doing this. Why do you guys keep doing stupid shit like this? I don't understand it. Was it worth to go on YouTube and brag and put people's lives in jeopardy?" Kilcullen leaned in toward Crane. "Don't you get it? What you and your wife did could get people killed." Kilcullen left the room and walked out to the waiting area. "Sarah's dead?" Mitchell answered. "Yes, Sergeant Crane, and you're going to prison for treason." Crane sat in his chair expressionless. Ron, Tom, and Mitchell left the room and kept an eye on Crane through the window. Kilcullen was still angry. "This pisses me off, having to send people to Gitmo and having to disappear people. That's not our mission. In these last few weeks, it just keeps happening." While Kilcullen talked, Ron noticed the expression of concern on Mitchell's face as she appeared to be remembering what Samantha Osgood told her about Farmerville. Ron and Tom urgently wanted to get to and from Gitmo as quickly as possible in anticipation of Jenny Johnson's story being released Monday morning. They finished preparing Crane, black bag over his head, and took him to the airplane, took off to Gitmo, and returned from Gitmo at 2 in the morning. Ron was able to get some sleep on the airplane, although he kept thinking about Kelly and how to approach her about the shooting of Sarah Crane. Ron went home and made a point to be quiet so as not to wake up Kelly or Laura. He went to the bedroom, undressed, and headed to the bathroom. "You've been to Gitmo again," he heard just before he shut the bathroom door. "Yeah, sorry. Didn't mean to wake you up." "It's okay. If I knew you were going to Gitmo again, I would have waited this afternoon till you got home," Kelly joked as she jumped out of bed and followed Ron to the bathroom. The story breaks. Monday, Thanksgiving week, 8:30 a.m. Ron left his house for work without having found an opportunity to talk with Kelly about Sarah Crane. He figured it could wait, and given Kelly's good mood and the distraction of upcoming events, he pushed it back for now. As Mitchell had arranged, Lisa Gordon had been released from Gitmo a week earlier, visited her family in Sacramento, and returned to Farmerville. She maintained a low profile, avoiding being seen by Jenny Johnson. Monday morning, Lisa returned from the gym as she did most mornings, took a shower, and had just gotten dressed when she heard a knock on the door. Lisa glanced out the window to see several news vans in front of her house. Mitchell had already briefed Lisa about this, so she was prepared. As Lisa opened the door, she said, "Yes, can I help you?" A woman reporter pointed a microphone in her face. She noticed off to the side a news cameraman had a camera aimed at her. "Could you tell us anything about the murdered couple who lived here, Jeremiah and Lisa Gordon?" Lisa smiled and let out a little laugh before she said, "What? Jeremiah was killed in a car wreck a week ago. What are you talking about? What about the murder of Lisa Gordon, his wife?" Lisa laughed, widely shaking her head. "What is wrong with you people? My husband's dead, and you're asking me for answers about my own murder. You guys stupid or what? She said angrily, to which the reporter took a slight step backward with an expression of befuddlement. I tell you what, find out who murdered me. That would be some great investigative journalism, Lisa yelled before slamming the door closed. A minute later, Lisa left her house and walked toward her car, ignoring the onslaught of approaching reporters yelling out asking about her death. Really, guys? I'm Lisa Gordon. How could I be dead? Who told you I was murdered? I spent the last few days in California with my parents and got back yesterday, she told them as she got into her car and drove off, heading to the sheriff's station. The stunned reporters started talking among themselves and came to the same conclusion. Their source was the story written by Jenny Johnson. Lisa sped up to the sheriff's station, stopping with a slight screech of the tires. She got out of her car and briskly walked to the front door, making her way through the crowd of news crews. Billy and Keisha were on duty at the front door, and upon noticing Lisa, Billy asked, Miss Gordon? Followed by Keisha asking, Mrs. Gordon, what are you doing here? This further sparked the curiosity of the news crews. There's a bunch of reporters in front of my house asking me stupid questions about my own murder. What the hell? Come inside, Mrs. Gordon. The reporters immediately started yelling out questions toward Lisa. Lisa didn't notice that Jenny Johnson was standing off to the side behind some of the other reporters. As soon as Lisa and Keisha went inside, Jenny, furious, let out a loud screaming grunt, which caught everyone's attention. The other reporters, as nature would have it, immediately pounced on Jenny, who pushed her way through and ran to her car. Inside the station, they watched Jenny through the window and enjoyed the mutual moment of satisfaction at Jenny's impending downfall. Ken asked, Is everybody here? If so, we could start the meeting early. A previous planning discussion called for Lisa to stay a few hours at the sheriff's station until they found out how Jenny was going to react. Lisa was shown to an interview room, and everyone else went to the conference room to start the meeting. Monday meeting. Billy and Keisha went inside to attend the meeting with Ron, Ken, Tom, Phillips, and Mitchell. Kilcullen was also there. As everybody entered the conference room and took their seats, Ken started the meeting by bringing everyone's attention to the dry erase board on the wall that had all the ongoing points to be reviewed. Ken gave a nod to Phillips and Mitchell. Mitchell started with, Thank you, Ken. Been a busy weekend. I had planned on starting with Lisa Gordon, but unfortunately, we had an incident yesterday where we found out a young girl was running her mouth about Valkyrie. I say girl because she's 23, Sarah Crane, and her husband, Sergeant Crane, he's 25. Only been here a month, he's one of our MPs. Ken smiled. So, Phillips, isn't this where you say it keeps on getting better? You're right, Ken, but I tell you with all that's going on, I'm starting to believe the rumors about this town being cursed. I know, Mitchell agreed. The Crane girl got herself killed yesterday, and it turns out, to top it all off, she had a YouTube channel where she talked about fashion junk, but also blabbed about her husband and his job at Valkyrie. The YouTube channel has been taken down, but we had hoped her husband would be in the clear. But turns out, he was in the videos too. Kilcullen slammed the table, his anger from yesterday renewed. Sorry guys, it pissed me off too when we found out about this yesterday. Sergeant Crane is already down in Gitmo. Ron and Tom had to make another trip last night. Mitchell continued and briefed everyone about how the proposal to Lisa went well, and she agreed to comply and understood the bomb in the head part. Most everyone in the room laughed. Mitchell continued to explain that Lisa was fully cooperating and would avoid any contact with Jenny Johnson until it was confirmed it would be safe for her to go back home. Phillips interjected. "We're tracking Johnson. I think all of you know Susan in the back of the room there. She's keeping tabs on Johnson for us to include any phone calls." Phillips told the group that Keisha contacted him a few days ago with Jenny Johnson's contact, a Jerome Whitaker who coincidentally had flown out of California and stayed in St. Louis overnight. It was estimated he'd arrive in Farmerville within the hour, and it appeared that he didn't tell Johnson he was on his way. Since Mr. Whitaker was out of town last night, 3 hours ago, his residence, workplace, and everything was being checked. As soon as he gets in town, we'll be grabbing him and bringing him here to interview. As the meeting ended, Phillips added, "There's a lot going on with Jenny Johnson, and we need to see what Whitaker knows. But last night, she was poking around at the Holcomb farm. From what we saw in the surveillance video, she was looking for something. But what she was looking for, we don't know. We're not sure yet. Still working on that. But more to come." Keisha was disturbed by hearing that Jenny was at the Holcomb farm. "We're going to do something about that girl, aren't we?" "Patience, Keisha. Soon. Very soon," Phillips told her. Jerome Whitaker interview. A few minutes later, 2 FBI agents brought Whitaker into the station. Whitaker was nicely dressed, a 35-year-old black man, tall, slender, well-built, sporting a goatee and bald, shaved head. He walked with an air of confidence that could be interpreted as arrogance. As he walked toward the conference room, he glanced around the station. The 2 FBI agents took Whitaker into the conference room and had him sit at a table and then left. Phillips, Ken, Ron, Tom, and Keisha entered the room and sat at the table with Whitaker. As a precaution to avoid any potential issues, Mitchell and Kilcullen did not attend. As they took their seats, Phillips made the introductions. Whitaker was agitated. "You've already violated my civil rights. No one told me why I'm here or anything." "In due time, Mr. Whitaker, in due time. We appreciate your patience," Phillips told him as he slowly shuffled through folders, deliberately taking his time. "I'm short on time. I have some places I need to be, work I gotta do, and I haven't done anything wrong." Phillips smiled and used a more lighthearted tone as he said, "You're not in trouble, Mr. Whitaker. I know when people hear police or federal agents, they think something's wrong. But in your case, Mr. Whitaker, you might be here because we need your help or something like that. So don't worry. We'll get to why you're here." Whitaker's demeanor changed as relief washed over his face. "You've been very successful in what you've done over the years. A lot of big-time stories and no scandals." "That's true. I consider myself a journalist with integrity, and all my stories that I've done needed to be told." "I think all of us would agree. And you've done great work in your career. And you're educated, went to Harvard. That's not common for a black man your age. Hey, Tom, where'd you go to college?" "Pineland," Tom answered with a smile as Ron let out a snort. Everyone looked at Ron and Tom, and Whitaker felt like he was being made fun of. Ron quickly explained that Pineland was an inside reference that Green Berets had about where they did their training. "Sorry, Mr. Whitaker, I wasn't trying to be disrespectful. It's just I don't get asked that question a lot, but Pineland is something I'm proud of, and if you're interested, I got my MBA at Michigan, and Ron here, Mizzou, which is nothing to be proud of, Ron," Tom said, teasing, relaxing the mood. "You guys Green Berets?" a curious Whitaker asked. Ron and Tom told him they were both retired and had spent 20 years in the service. "I can see you're thinking about me and Tom here being Green Berets has got those squirrels in your head running around, doesn't it? It is interesting that there'd be Green Berets in a small town like this." It's not so odd, Mr. Whitaker. There is life after military service. A lot of the guys who retire go into law enforcement all over the country, not just in the big cities. Plus, there's also the convenience factor for us with the Army Reserve Armory here, which is why you would find a lot of military people in a small town like this. It's not unusual. Not unusual at all. Did that story Miss Johnson wrote say anything about an Army Reserve facility being here? As Whitaker thought about what Ron asked, everyone waited for a response and watched Whitaker as he suddenly realized he was there because of Johnson's story. Ken stood up and stared down Whitaker. You don't need to answer that, Mr. Whitaker. We already know there's no mention in her story about an Army Reserve unit here, even though there's mention of a secret army, which means she's implying that the Army Reserve is a secret army. But they're not so secret out here. You can go down there any weekend of the month and you'll see them on weekend drills. Ken started to laugh lightly as he continued. You'll see a bunch of them out there running around like they're in one of those Hollywood war movies where troops run around aimlessly all over the place, doing nothing. Hang around this weekend. You'll see them out there. Everyone smiled and chuckled, going along with Ken's lighthearted explanation and invitation. Conversations were held about the unrealistic scenes from war movies, college, and other stories. Whitaker joined in the conversations and was feeling relaxed. Ken got everyone's attention. Okay, we need to get back to business. We can't keep him here all day. You're right, Ken, Phillips answered. So, Mr. Whitaker, down to business. Miss Jenny Johnson works for you, right? She's freelance, so she doesn't work directly for me or anyone else. What about her story she published this morning about the Gordon murders? Whitaker sat back in his seat, projecting pride. It was a great story, and it's not just the murders. It's the government involvement in those murders. But now you make me wonder. Phillips glanced around the room and smiled along with everyone else, except for Whitaker. What am I missing? Whitaker asked. Nothing was said for a moment until Keisha muttered under her breath. Stupid motherfucker! Loud enough for everyone to hear, including Whitaker. What does that mean? What? I tell you what, Keisha said as she slid her phone toward Whitaker, glancing at Phillips for approval, to which he nodded yes. Mr. Whitaker, have you seen the news this morning? I mean, the news other than your story? I'm sorry, Johnson's story? She asked as she shoved him her phone and pointed to a breaking news alert. They watched Whitaker as he read the story that told about Lisa Gordon being alive. He sat back in his chair. He said nothing as he grimaced and started to rock angrily back and forth, clenching his fist. Seeing the anger build, Phillips sternly interjected. You need to take a breath, Mr. Whitaker. Calm down. It's done with, and we still need to talk about this story and Miss Johnson. Whitaker calmed down but was visibly angry, but he expressed to Phillips he was ready to listen. All right. First thing, 4 years ago, Chicago. Oh shit. That has nothing to do with anything, Whitaker told Phillips. Hear me out, Mr. Whitaker. Let's just say for a moment it does have something to do with Chicago. You were caught using listening devices, and let's just leave it at that. And as coincidences go, we have a situation right here in this very building where Miss Johnson placed a listening device that you gave her. Whitaker started squirming. We know you didn't purchase it, but we know someone purchased it for you. Correct so far, right? Whitaker gave his reluctant nod. Let's play a game I call 20 questions. 10 questions I know the answers to, and 10 questions I don't. And you get to answer all of them. Just kidding. I don't really have 20 questions. That just has a nice ring to it. But I do have a few. Whitaker gave another reluctant nod. I assume you do understand journalism standards that also go along with legal standards, And ever since 9/11 and the Patriot Act, when somebody says something, be it true or false, that could threaten to expose national security concerns, that individual, in our case Jenny Johnson, may be subject to surveillance. Which brings us to why you're sitting here today. Whitaker continued to squirm, and even though no one heard what he said, they saw his lips form, "Bitch." Phillips observed Whitaker's frustration. "Mr. Whitaker, that may or may not be true, but regardless, there is a problem, and we will need you to share with us what you know and how she even came up with this type of story. Understand?" "Yes, but before any of the buts, that deal in Chicago, would that be void if you were to run into a similar situation?" Whitaker looked at Phillips and the others with an expression of disbelief at being caught. "I don't think that's going to happen here, right, Mr. Whitaker?" Whitaker gave another one of his reluctant nods. "We noticed you didn't contact Johnson about your trip here. Did you have some sort of suspicion or reason?" Whitaker gave a slight smile. "It was planned a few weeks ago for me to come down because we kind of got a thing going on." "That figures. Yeah, that figures." Keisha burst out with a laugh, which caused most of the others to join in the laughter. Whitaker didn't understand what the joke was. "What's so funny? What are you all laughing at? That's not cool. We plan on getting married." More laughter erupted as Tom leaned across the table and got Whitaker's attention. "You know, Keisha here was right about you. You are a stupid motherfucker. That girl is twisted. If you walk out of here today, you need to run as far away from that girl as you can. I'm telling you the truth, brother. You need to get as far away from her as you can. I'm sorry, I feel for you, but honestly, you need to run," Tom told Whitaker with sincerity. Then Phillips looked at Whitaker. She was already on top of the world with the serial killers. That was a huge story for her a few weeks ago. And then 5 days ago, another huge story with the child porn ring, which might end up being bigger than the serial killers. Child porn? Whitaker was surprised. "You didn't know? Hell, Keisha told her about it Wednesday night." Whitaker just gave a nod. Phillips gave a puzzled expression. "It just baffles me that she didn't break that story. She had an inside source to that story with Keisha here. You know, they've been between the sheets for a while now. Sorry, Keisha." Keisha gave an embarrassed laugh. "That's all right, Phillips," Keisha answered as she leaned forward in her chair, smiling at Whitaker. "It's all right, Mr. Whitaker. I was a stupid motherfucker too." More laughter as the mood in the room lightened, with even Whitaker cracking a smile. Ken tapped the table to get everybody's attention. "All right, everyone, back to work." During the next half hour, Whitaker answered Phillips's questions and, with the results from the previous search warrants, determined that Whitaker did not have any involvement aside from providing Johnson with listening devices, which was enough for Phillips to take advantage of the opportunity to engage Whitaker with a deal of immunity, providing he would cooperate as needed in the future. Whitaker gave another one of his agreeing nods. The interview ended and everyone walked out to the lobby. "I tell you what, Mr. Whitaker, I think Tom there gave you some good advice about getting away from Miss Johnson. I promise you, I am definitely doing that. If you want to stay in town a few days, I can give you the inside scoop with this child porn ring as it develops." Whitaker thought about it, briefly looked at Phillips and the others, then shook his head. "Thank you, but no thank you. I'm going to get out of here, if that's okay with you guys." "Understand, Mr. Whitaker, and best of luck to you," Phillips told him as the door to the lobby opened and 2 deputies walked in with a handcuffed Jenny Johnson. Upon seeing Jenny in handcuffs, Whitaker smiled as he nodded at Phillips and the others, said goodbye, and walked toward the door to the 2 waiting FBI agents who were taking him back to his car. As Whitaker approached the door, Phillips said in an ominous manner, "Mr. Whitaker, keep your phone close. I'll be in touch." Whitaker gave Phillips another one of his nods. When Jenny saw everyone looking at her, she let fly a proliferation of obscenities and accusations and fought with the two deputies. Ken instructed the deputies to put Johnson in the holding cell and asked Phillips, "What are we going to do with her? And when can we get that bug out of my office in Keisha's place?" "Ken, Keisha, I got a team on the way as we speak to remove all the bugs. Meanwhile, Johnson stays in the cell, and we need to be back here at 5 o'clock for an update on Johnson." Phillips got Ron's attention. "Hey, Ron, that doctor you told me about. Couldn't find her." "What? That's crazy. My wife has an appointment with her this morning, and I'm seeing her this afternoon. I'll check it out for you." "No point now. The Army sent somebody else to take over for Fitz." Ron didn't think much of it and thought it might be better if Linda was not involved. He had grown to like Linda over the 2 appointments he had had so far, and selfishly wanted to keep her to himself.
This episode of Chilling Tales for Dark Nights is brought to you by Dipsy. I know the feeling, ladies. You've devoured the entire Akotar series and are now left with a hole in your heart. Well, our friends at Dipsy mean to fill it for you with countless bite-sized tales of forbidden love stories to sweep you off your feet. Dipsy is a female-founded romance app full of spicy audiobooks and more. If you've read 50 Shades of Grey, Beach Read, or The Spanish Love Deception, this app was made for you. With their easy-to-explore app, you can search for your favorite romance genres, contemporary, historical, western, and more. Brand new chapters come out every week, so you'll always find something new. Hey, I know this site is kind of female-focused, sure. So when my wife walked in on me listening to Swipe Right 1 the first time, yeah, she was a little taken aback, but that didn't last long, let me tell you. Before you knew it, we were both listening, and what happened after that is none of your damn business. I'll say this much, romance is good for everyone. So hop on over there and get your 1,000+ succulent, sexy tales from our friends at Dipsy. Ladies, it's a no-brainer, and fellas, we're all in this together, buddy. For listeners of the show, Dipsy is offering an extended 30-day free trial when you go to dipsystories.com/chilling. That's 30 days of full access for free when you go to dipseastories.com/chilling. dipsystories.com/chilling. Thank you for your support and for supporting our valuable sponsors.
Dr. Linda's car therapy. Early afternoon, Ron went to his appointment with Dr. Linda. He parked his cruiser in the parking lot and walked inside. A part of him was eager to tell Linda everything that had been going on, including the issue with Dr. Fitz. Ron shared his recent experiences and his concern for Laura. Kelly had finished her appointment with Linda earlier that morning and felt that the session went well. However, she still had concerns and wanted to talk with Ron about it. She drove back to Linda's office to meet with Ron after his session ended. She parked next to his cruiser. Meanwhile, Linda was talking with Ron when he abruptly lost his focus. "What's that? Do you hear that?" he asked Linda. "What, Ron? I don't hear anything." In an instant, Ron's vision dimmed, losing color like a surreal black and white dream. The edges of his vision were foggy, unclear, and sounds and voices were faint and echoing. That knocking. There's somebody knocking on the window. There's nobody knocking, Ron. Yes, there is. It's weird. It's everywhere, and it's getting really loud. You don't hear that? Ron anxiously glanced around the office, anxiety overtaking him. He looked at Linda. Ron started to sway side to side. "What the hell?" Ron moved wildly left to right, side to side in the chair while he yelled. He was panicking, with no control of his body. Linda stood up, grabbed his shoulders, and with a peculiar laugh said, "I'm sorry, Ron. I'm sorry. I guess." As Linda spoke, Ron watched as her appearance changed. "Rose? Rose? I'm sorry, Ron. I guess the cat's out of the bag." Rose slapped Ron across his face. The sting of the slap caused Ron to close his eyes for a second. When he opened his eyes, he was blinded by an intense brightness. "Ron! Ron! Ron!" Kelly yelled. He frantically looked around. The door of the cruiser was open and Kelly was stooped over, shaking him and yelling. Ron went into full panic as he pushed Kelly out of his way and got out of the cruiser. "This is insane!" Ron yelled as he paced erratically. "Ron, baby, what's going on with you? I thought you were dead or something." Ron was distraught as he looked back at Kelly. He leaned up against the cruiser and then sat on the ground. "I don't know what's going on. I haven't felt anything like this since that time I got blown up. Everything's strange. I don't know. Such a strange feeling." "Stay here, baby. I'm going to run in and get Dr. Linda to come out and take a look at you. Okay? Stay here. Don't go anywhere." "Sure. No, don't go," he mumbled. Then he thought about it and with a short laugh said, "Ha! Yeah, go ahead. Go get her." He didn't understand how he got from her office to his cruiser without knowing it. A perplexed Kelly stepped back and ran across the parking lot to the office building. Ron had second thoughts about letting Kelly go, but in less than a minute, she came out, turned around to look at the building number, turned back toward Ron, and screamed. Ron got up and approached Kelly as she ran toward him, crying, and hugged him. "I don't understand. I was here a few hours ago. How could she have moved that fast? Is that why you weren't in there? She moved or something? It's a lab office. The receptionist said they've been there 10 years. I don't understand this. Don't make any sense. Why were you in your car? What's going on, Ron? What's going on?" "What?" Ron broke the hug and walked toward the office building. Kelly followed. Inside, he found the same thing Kelly had told him, a lab office instead of Dr. Rayford's office. He turned to Kelly. "This makes no sense. No sense. Right now, I don't know if this is real or what." They walked outside. "When you woke me up, I had been in her office. This is really freaking me out. I don't know what the hell is going on. I was in there. I was in her office. She was talking to me, and she slapped me." Ron touched his cheek, still feeling the sting. "That was real. But how did I get out here?" Kelly was frightened and shaking. They walked to Ron's cruiser. "Ron, this is scaring me to death. It looks like she was never there. No office. How could we be going to the same place, same person, who's not even there?" They both got into Ron's cruiser to talk and exchange what they had discussed with Linda during their sessions. Ron told her about asking Linda what to do about telling Laura about Fitz. "She told me," Kelly finished his sentence, "not to tell her, right? That's what she told me. This is really weird. This can't be happening." They talked about similarities in their sessions, then Ron told her, "At my first session, Linda laughed, and it was just like Rose's laugh. And just before you woke me up, Linda was staring me in the face and she changed right in front of me. She kind of morphed into Rose and told me she was sorry, and the cat's out of the bag." Ron finished with a little laugh. "Rose?" "Yeah, Rose, the old Indian woman. I've told you about her before." Kelly was overwhelmed with terror as she grasped Ron's hand. The look on Kelly's face scared Ron. "Why is she messing with us? Kelly asked. Who? What? She is a younger-looking version of Rose. You know Rose? He asked. God, you don't know? Know what? Ron asked cautiously. Kelly was trembling. Rose Carolina, the witch doctor of Farmerville. Babe, she's not real. Tears streamed down her face. Ron was in denial, not considering any explanation or possibilities. Ron, she's a ghost. The ghost of Rose Carolina. They've got that plaque and statue for her over at Carolina Park. Ron was angry. He got out of the cruiser, slammed the door, and leaned up against Kelly's car. He thought about all the possibilities, every encounter he had had with Rose, and none of it made any sense to him. He wondered if he was having a dream, and none of this was actually happening. He questioned some of the conversations he had had with Rose that did make sense. Why is this happening? Kelly had left the cruiser to stand next to Ron. Then the alarm on his cell phone sounded. Ron started laughing. What's so funny? It's time for the session with Linda to end. Kelly laughed along with him. Nervous anxiety kicked in. You know, Ron, this ain't funny. Still, their nervous laughter continued. Ron had an idea and asked Kelly to go inside the building with him. Ron's idea was one he hoped would disprove the ghost story idea. They went to the security office. Ron was in his sheriff's uniform and convinced the security officer to allow him to review the videotapes of the parking lot. They spent the next 15 minutes watching videos from their appointment times and were disillusioned to find that both of them parked but never got out of their cars. Ron went back a year to the day of Kelly's first appointment. Same result. Kelly did not get out of the car. Ron, Kelly said, her voice cracking. A year? I've been doing this a year? This is depressing. Crazy how could this be happening to both of us? It wouldn't make sense even for one of us, but both of us? At this point, they were both in denial and racked with anxiety. Ron had another thought about how to disprove the ghost story. This makes no sense. Other people see her. The waitress called me from Cherokee Diner to meet Rose. Let's go to Cherokee Diner. Come on, follow me over there. They got in their cars and drove to Cherokee Diner, went inside, sat in a booth, and ordered an early dinner. Ron looked around for the waitress he saw serving Jenny that night. He asked for the waitress to come to their table. Her name was Mary, an older woman in her 50s. Hello, Mary, I have a question for you. Do you know Rose? Mary took a half step back and looked at Ron and Kelly suspiciously. Then she asked them, Do you know Rose? Ron and Kelly were reluctant to answer, but their expression told Mary that they did know Rose. Yes, I know Rose, and I gather you do too. But why are you asking? A few weeks back, she asked someone here to call the station for me. Yeah, that was me. So? Yeah, we're just a little confused about her. Why? Because she's a ghost? Kelly snickered and Ron gave her a look. Well, Kelly, I'm sorry, babe, but you act like you didn't know. Yeah, I'm still not sure. I don't believe in ghost stuff. Never thought it was true. Mary smiled at their conversation. You guys are funny, but hell, everybody who sees Rose knows she's a ghost. Why only some people can see her and others don't? I have no idea. They chatted with Mary on and off for the next half hour. Ron and Kelly weren't able to eat, nor able to make any sense about Rose or Linda. Ron told Kelly how Billy could see Rose too and suggested they talk to him. He also said he only had a few minutes before he had to get back to the station for the late meeting that Phillips had scheduled, so he would try to talk to Billy there. Ron was still troubled about Sarah Crane and wanted to ask Kelly about it. He attempted to bring it up, but she was evasive and still acted shook up. Kelly, she had a burn mark on her forehead from your pistol. You shot her 3 times. You're an expert shot. It doesn't take you 3 times to hit anything." Kelly didn't answer as she trembled and looked into Ron's eyes. "Ron, did you marry me because you love me? Or did you marry me because of the things that happened back then?" Ron got emotional, teared up, and returned to Kelly's gaze. "Kelly, babe, I loved you. I was stupid, crazy, mad in love with you. I fell in love with you the very first time I saw you, standing naked on your front steps." The Trouble with Kelly Ford Farmer. Kelly had deflected Ron's attempt to talk about killing Sarah Crane, and as he thought about it, he knew she was deflecting, and he understood why. He decided not to pursue it. People have addictions. Some have a sex addiction. Ron was not one of those people. He did not have a sex addiction. He had a Kelly addiction, ever since the first time their eyes met 27 years ago. To say Kelly was not always like this would be a colossal misstatement. Kelly Ford was born in 1980, a year before her future husband Ron. Kelly was by all accounts a typical cute baby girl and considered beautiful by her parents, Jenny and Jonah Ford. The Fords had an older son who was 6 when Kelly was born, and a few years later, they would have another boy. The Ford family was considered a normal, upstanding family within their small, exiled Mormon community, or at least that was the case in the early years. In the 1980s, the population of Farmerville shrank to less than 8,000 due to the closings of the mines, an industry in Farmerville for over 100 years. Kelly and her siblings and most children in the small Mormon community were home and church schooled. As Kelly grew older, she became a mischievous young girl, an expert practitioner of bad behavior. Kelly was a rebel, resistant to authority. But that was not all she was. For a young girl who was troublesome and undisciplined, she was a contradiction in that she was very smart, the smartest academically in her classes. However, her behavior overshadowed her brilliance. Many within the community would complain, gossip, and say she had the devil in her, which created resentment from the community toward the Ford family, a resentment that did not sit well with Jonah Ford. Her father administered severe and extreme punishments for misbehaving. The widely accepted practice of spankings and use of a belt was the standard form of punishment, although Kelly's father would also administer other physical punishments by forcing her to kneel on a stick, stand in a corner for hours, or tying her hands behind her back. It could be said that the extent of the punishments contributed deeply to her growing resentment of her parents, the church, and society in general. In the 1980s and early 90s, had a psychiatrist had the opportunity to examine someone like Kelly at a young age, they would likely have seen signs of abuse and PTSD and recommended counseling, medication, therapy, or other options, including commitment to a facility. However, they would have also strongly objected to how her father was treating her. Unfortunately, the Fords and other members of the church community were secretive about any problems they had and were not open to ideas about mental health or counseling unless it was conducted by church elders. Kelly's mind was a jumbled jungle of inquisitiveness and discord, resulting in acting out in temper tantrums. Her mother rarely disciplined her, although one time when she was 13, Kelly was mad at one of her brothers and yelled, "Suck a dick," generating laughs from her brothers, but Kelly's mom's reaction was swift and violent with a strong slap to Kelly's face. She grabbed Kelly by the shoulders, violently shaking her and screaming, "Where'd you hear that? Where did you learn to say that?" Her mom angrily repeated the question, demanding an answer, but not giving a sobbing Kelly a chance to answer. "God will hate you for saying that." The incident traumatized Kelly. Aside from her mother's anger, the statement about God hating her was confusing, especially since she had been doing it since she was 10. It was worrisome to Kelly that God hated her, which, over time, would contribute to her withdrawal from the Mormon Church and its teachings and culture. Kelly was an early bloomer. beginning her adolescence around 11 years old, earlier than most girls at the time, and her hormones were raging from that early age. Over the years, on more than one occasion, Kelly was caught having varied sexual encounters with the local boys. Such behavior was not condoned, nor was a counselor considered an option. By today's research and standards, if a counselor had had an opportunity to work with someone exhibiting similar behavior as Kelly's, they would most likely determine Kelly's behavior was in part brought on by experiences she encountered in her home life with her father. Her father was strict and believed in punishment and humiliation. With that approach, when Kelly was 10, he introduced an alternative to beatings, forcing Kelly to perform oral sex on him. This alternative became the preferred punishment of Jonah's. But instead of a form of punishment, Jonah eventually transitioned it as being God's duty requirements for a woman, which continued until the day he died. When Kelly was nearing 16 years old, on an early Friday, October afternoon in 1995, she found herself in the bedroom of the teenage Jensen boys, sons of Eli Jensen, the bishop of the local Mormon congregation. Kelly and the boys were engaged in what had become a regular meeting for exploratory sexual encounters. They were oblivious to the sound of Eli Jensen returning home early that day when he opened the bedroom door and surprised them. Eli Jensen was exposed to the sight of his sons and Kelly's nakedness and their intertwined bodies. Kelly and the boys jumped off the bed as Eli yelled and pulled the belt off his waist and began lashing it like a whip at Kelly and his sons. He yelled an onslaught of obscenities toward Kelly as she dodged his attempts to grab her. The naked Kelly scurried out the bedroom door past Eli and ran down the hallway toward the front door with Eli in pursuit. Eli grabbed a shotgun next to the door as he ran outside. He chased Kelly down the street, aimed the shotgun toward her, and pulled the trigger. Kelly ran as fast as she could, heard the shotgun blast, and felt a sting to her right shoulder and right butt cheek. Her adrenaline was in overdrive. Her fear changed to exhilarating laughter as she ran home. She heard people saying something to her, but it sounded like echoes. She glanced behind her and saw Eli Jensen still chasing her, although he had fallen far behind. She continued to run for another minute until she got home, ran up the front steps to the porch, and through the front door. The screen door slammed behind her as she ran into the kitchen. Kelly stood in front of the kitchen sink, catching her breath, sweating while she looked out the window and saw Eli Jensen down the street. He had stopped chasing her and just stood in the middle of the street yelling at bystanders who came to gawk at the scene. Kelly felt a sense of exuberance, thinking that Eli Jensen had given up his chase. "What the hell are you doing, Kelly?" Her dad's voice rang out from behind her. Startled, she turned around and caught the glare in his eye. Kelly was still out of breath as she watched her dad staring at her heaving breasts. Kelly was paralyzed and didn't know what to do. "Stop staring, Dad." Her request to stop was answered by Jonah grabbing her by the hair at the back of her head and pushing her to her knees. He tilted her head up, looked down at her breasts with his lustful stare, and told her, "You need to be punished for this." The excited Jonah did not take long to finish as he chastised Kelly. "Finish it, little cunt. Finish it." Kelly complied with her dad's demand, just as she always had since she was 10 years old. "You finished? You got it all, little cunt." "Mm-hmm," Kelly moaned as her mind raced. Hearing the C word triggered something with Kelly. Her dad had said that to her every time for years, but this time, it was different. It could have been the combination of adrenaline, being shot, or her dad gawking at her breasts. It could have been that her father was not concerned and failed to realize that something serious had happened, and that there was a reason she was out of breath, standing naked in the kitchen. There was one other thing that struck a chord with Kelly. It was the way he looked at her. Over the years, even the first time he introduced it and coached Kelly on how to perform oral sex, he never made eye contact, and neither did she. In Kelly's mind, the look in his eyes was pure lust, evil, repulsive, and it made her sick and enraged her. As Kelly's blood boiled, Jonah glanced out the window and saw a crowd of people. "What have you done, little cunt?" That was it. Kelly's reaction to hearing the C word one more time was immediate. She stood up and violently pushed him away, knocking him to the floor. Her reaction to push him was an impulse that she didn't think about. She glanced around, looked at the dishes in the dish rack next to the sink, and grabbed a knife. Turning toward her dad as he stood up yelling, she thrust the knife into his stomach. Jonah was dazed and made eye contact with her as he grabbed her hand and struggled to remove the knife. Kelly pulled the knife out and stabbed him again. Jonah fell to his knees and looked up at Kelly as she pulled the knife out. Jonah slid sideways against the kitchen cabinet. Kelly purposely leaned over him, dangling her breasts inches from his face. "How about these tits, Dad? One last look. Am I still your little cunt, Daddy?" She slid the knife across his throat. "Shit!" she exclaimed as her dad thwarted her attempt as he grabbed his throat with both of his hands. But that did not stop her from trying again and again until his resistance stopped. He was dead. There was blood. Lots of it. Kelly was amazed at how much blood there was. She stood up, turned on the cold water in the kitchen sink, grabbed a glass, and had a long drink. As she turned off the water, her mother called out from upstairs. Kelly forgot her mother and younger brother were both home. Her older brother was away at college. "Jonah, you see all these people out front? What's going on?" Kelly looked out the window. During the previous couple of minutes, she had been oblivious to the yelling from the crowd outside. Kelly took a deep breath and took another drink of water before running upstairs. "Is that you, Jonah? Come here, look out the window." It wasn't Jonah running up the stairs. Kelly stood in the doorway of the bedroom. Her mother didn't notice until Kelly's brother screamed, "Ma? Mom! Mom!" Jenny turned and was startled by the appearance of a naked, blood-spattered Kelly holding a bloody knife in her hand and a crazed look on her face. Her 12-year-old brother froze in the corner of the bedroom. Jenny nervously screamed at Kelly as she tried to put space between herself and Kelly. Anger and frustration built up in Kelly as she rationalized in her mind that her mom was just as guilty as her dad for what had happened to her. "Why did you let him do it? Why? I told you. I tried to tell you a couple of times." "What, Kelly, what?" "Don't do that innocent I didn't know bullshit. I was 10 years old the first time I tried to tell you, and a year later, I tried to tell you again. You wouldn't listen. A couple of years later, the only time you ever got mad at me for anything was when you told me God hated me if I ever sucked a dick." Kelly smiled bitterly. "It's funny. Daddy started me out when I was 10 because it was something you wouldn't do for him. What he called your womanly duties." Kelly told her with hate-filled inflection. "It's an abomination, Kelly. No Christian woman is allowed to do that." "Abomination? Abomination? If it's such an abomination, why'd you let your husband make your daughter do it?" Kelly started gesturing wildly. "It's not an abomination, Mom. It's sex. Everybody does it, and you're too much of a prude to accept it. That's why all these creepy old men have 2 and 3 wives." Kelly paced back and forth. "What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you?" "Where's your father?" "What?" Kelly stood still, facing her mother, her legs spread apart and arms extended in a look-at-me pose. She gave a shrug that made her brother snort, trying to hold back his laughter. "What do you think, Mom?" Kelly responded as she looked down at the knife in one hand. With the other hand, she wiped her fingers across her chest and showed her mother the blood with a smile. Her brother again tried his best not to laugh. "Where is my father? Where is my father?" That's what you want to know? Shouldn't you be asking something like, how am I? Or, oh my God? Or, if I'm going to kill little brother over there? Kelly looked at her brother and gave him a wink before assuring him, I'm not. Kelly went into a rant before shouting, hell with it, and leaping like a frog across the bed toward Jenny, tackling her to the floor. She let out a howl and violently stabbed Jenny repeatedly. Finally, Kelly stopped, slowly stood up, and went to the window to peer at the mob outside. She looked at her frightened brother, surprised he was still in the room. Kelly watched as his eyes darted toward her, but quickly looked away. I'm proud of you, brother. I know I'm standing in front of you naked, and you're trying not to look. That's good of you, she told him with tears in her eyes. When you get married one day, don't ever treat your kids like Dad and Mom treated us. Her brother acknowledged with a nod, and Kelly motioned to him to leave. He walked quickly to the door, then took off in a sprint. Kelly followed, and as she slowly walked toward the staircase, she experienced an overwhelming feeling of euphoria, happiness, and relief. When she reached the top of the stairs, she watched her brother open the front door. For a moment, everything stopped. The sudden sound of breaking glass preceded a fireball at the front door, which engulfed her brother in flames. Her brother screamed. She heard more glass breaking. The horrific, heart-wrenching sounds of her brother screaming was joined by the crackling noise of burning flames behind her. She ran down the stairs and was stopped by the image of her brother's burning body convulsing on the front porch. His screams were almost drowned out by the chanting mob, "Burn! Burn! Burn!" The flames were too intense to get through the door to help her brother. Kelly was in a panic as she ran toward the back door. The back of the hallway was engulfed in flames. Kelly ran to the bathroom and filled the bathtub with water. She closed the door, got a towel wet, and placed it at the bottom of the door to keep the smoke out. 5 minutes passed. Kelly began to feel the heat of the fire. Smoke made its way into the bathroom. She opened the small window over the bathtub, which created a vacuum effect, drawing more smoke in. The window was too small to get out. Kelly got in the bathtub and hoped it would save her. She laid in the water for 5 minutes, experiencing a rush of emotions. The exhilarating feeling she had from killing her parents, countered by the gut-wrenching sorrow over her brother being burned alive, and compounded by her own impending death by fire. The noise of the house burning drowned out the faint sounds of sirens, as Kelly thought it might be better if she died, until a piece of the burning ceiling fell into the bathtub. She jumped out of the tub and thought through her options as another piece of the ceiling fell. She got a wet washcloth and put it over her face, took a deep breath, opened the bathroom door, and found to her surprise no flames, just smoke. She looked down the hall where flames leaped at both ends. The linen closet was within reach. She grabbed a blanket, went back to the bathroom, and threw the blanket in the bathtub and soaked it. Kelly peeked out of the bathroom door. The back door was fully engulfed in flames. The front was not as bad, or at least she hoped. She grabbed the wet blanket and draped herself in it, took a deep breath, and ran to the front door. Outside the house, the sound of approaching sirens was drowned out by the chanted, "Burn it! Burn it!" from the mob of about 20 of Eli Jensen's congregation. Behind the mob, a larger, frustrated group of bystanders felt helpless watching the burning house, believing that no one could possibly survive. Love at first sight. A saddened 15-year-old Ron Farmer watched the burning house with his friends Billy, Tommy, Jack, and a few others. The mob continued their chanting, encouraged and enticed by Eli Jensen along with support from a few of the women in the crowd. As Ron and his friends watched, an angry white woman stared at them and sternly told them, "You boys better get your Injun friends out of here if you know what's good for you," referring to Billy and Jim. The threat from the woman was interrupted with gasps from the crowd as they watched the front of the burning house. The glowing embers from the fire, combined with the fall pre-sunset beams of light emitting through the nearby trees, provided Ron's imagination with an ominous, surreal impression. In Ron's mind, everything went into slow motion as a burst of flame and a billow of smoke erupted from the front door, as a floating figure shrouded in what looked to Ron like a burning cloak emerged through the flames and landed on the front steps. With a scream, Kelly threw the burning blanket off her back. To Ron's eyes, it looked like a choreographed scene of a giant flying frisbee on fire spinning through the sky until it landed on the mob. Still feeling like time was moving in slow motion, Ron's view of the mob blended with the vision of Kelly shooting a steely-eyed glare at the crowd, interrupted for a brief second when she made eye contact with Ron. It was love at first sight. The puberty-stricken Ron was in love, or lust, enhanced in part by Kelly's naked body. He couldn't take his eyes off her as she glared at the mob. Ron was oblivious to the ongoing carnage surrounding him. The house on fire, the screaming mob, which had escalated from burn it to kill her, kill the whore, and the increasing threats to his friends Billy and Tommy. Nothing mattered to Ron in that moment. He was smitten, and she was the only thing on his mind as he studied her. The brief spell of Ron's infatuation with Kelly and love at first sight indulgence were broken by the mob attacking Kelly and beating her to the ground. "We gotta help her," Ron pleaded with his friends. "Go ahead, you'll get the same as she's getting," angry members of the mob threatened. And then they heard a gunshot blast. Except the crackling of the burning house, everything went quiet as they heard, "What the hell's going on here?" from a voice in the back. The voice came from a group of 5 men, the sheriff with 2 of his deputies, each carrying shotguns, and 2 more men, Native American Council police. As the 5 pushed their way through the front of the mob, Ron ran toward Kelly, followed by his friends. Ron knelt next to Kelly, who was curled in a fetal position. Billy quickly took off his sweatshirt and handed it to Ron to wrap around Kelly. The 5 men took notice of the boys' efforts to help Kelly and circled them. The older council policeman sternly asked, "What are you boys doing here?" Billy answered, "Dad, it's that bunch there. We had nothing to do with this. We just came down to see if we could help." Billy's dad gave him a proud smile. Billy's dad was William Sandoval, a tall man of Cherokee descent and the chief of the council police. He projected a menacing appearance, although as a husband, father, and friend, in the community, he was viewed as a humble and kind-hearted man. William noticed Ron's efforts to cover Kelly. "Boys, who is this?" "It's Kelly Ford. Take her to that ambulance pulling up back there." As Billy's dad instructed the boys, Billy noticed a tremendous change, an anger, in his dad's demeanor when he learned it was Kelly Ford. They stood Kelly up, covered her with their sweatshirts, and were escorted by the deputies through the crowd to the ambulance. William Sandoval had a quick conversation with the sheriff, Jesse Abbott. The sheriff walked toward the middle of the crowd where the 2 groups were separated. The bystanders were in the back and the mob to the front near the burning house. The sheriff and his deputies quietly told the bystanders to leave. Upon seeing the bystanders leaving, Eli Jensen announced, "All right, everyone, time to go home." The crowd turned away from the house to start leaving. "Where do y'all think you're going?" Sandoval yelled out. Everyone turned and looked at Sandoval. Eli Jensen answered, "We're getting out of your way. Let's go, everyone." Eli and the crowd turned to leave and were startled by another shotgun blast. They turned to see Sandoval and the other council policemen with their shotguns pointed at the crowd. They looked behind and saw the sheriff and his deputies, which had increased to 8 more, pointing their shotguns toward the crowd. Sandoval instructed Eli Jensen and his followers to follow the deputies down the street while the fire department moved into position to work on the fire. The crowd was disgruntled as Eli yelled obscenities and threats. Sandoval smiled. "Mr. Jensen, you and your followers need to follow the deputies down their a ways and then park your asses on the street. And I mean park. Sit down." Sandoval raised his shotgun. There's already been 2 warning shots today, and I'm telling you, there will not be a third." The crowd reluctantly did as they were instructed. Sandoval strolled over to the ambulance where the boys were watching over Kelly. Billy asked the paramedic how Kelly was doing. "She's very lucky, probably a miracle, not a burn on her, but all this blood's from a shotgun blast that caught her in the shoulder and butt. That, and she's beat up a bit. She should be okay." Sandoval thanked the paramedic and asked him and the boys to step away while he talked with Kelly. Kelly was nervous as Sandoval sat across from her in the back of the ambulance. "Kelly, you're not in trouble." Kelly didn't say a word. The fire chief approached the ambulance and got Sandoval's attention. He stepped outside to talk with the chief as Kelly watched intently. When the fire chief left, Sandoval got back in the ambulance. Kelly saw that Sandoval was distressed about the news the fire chief gave him. "It's okay, sir. They're dead, right?" "I'm sorry, Kelly." Kelly interrupted. "I know for sure my brother's dead because I watched them burn him. He was going outside, and they set him on fire. And they didn't even try to help him. They just stood there watching him burn and screaming. They yelled, 'Burn, burn, burn, burn.'" Kelly gave an emotional and sincere statement to Sandoval. She was distraught, and talking about it made her break down. "I could give a shit about my parents. My dad was molesting me since I was 10 years old. Before the fire, he made me give him a blowjob. Didn't give a shit why I was naked. This is all my fault. It's all my fault." Sandoval was taken back by Kelly's bluntness. However, he was sympathetic toward her. "It's not your fault, Kelly. I wouldn't have happened if Mr. Jensen caught me with his sons, you know. That's why I was running down the street naked. My dad didn't care. He just made me do that again." A sobbing Kelly confessed. Her emotions getting the best of her, she didn't care if she lived or died or what happened to her. She wanted to talk. She needed to talk. She told Sandoval everything she did and why she did it. She felt anger, but also sorry about her brother. And she wanted to die. Sandoval listened to Kelly and reinforced that it was not her fault. He thought it over and considered options about what to do with Kelly, especially given that Kelly had given what would be considered a spontaneous confession. Sandoval started to leave the ambulance. Before he opened the door, he looked at Kelly and told her sternly, "What you just told me, do not repeat that to anyone. No one. You understand, girl?" Kelly didn't answer, unsure what to do. He told her again to never tell anyone. Before he opened the door, he told her ominously, "Kelly, I don't know if you believe in God or fate, but I do. And karma, too." He shook his head sadly. "These crazies that burned down your house and killed your brother, they've been a thorn in this town's side for years, and this ain't the first time they've burned people. But I promise you, it will be the last." Sandoval affectionately rubbed her head as he got out of the ambulance and gave her a goodbye nod. He turned his attention to the boys. "You boys stay with her a bit until the paramedic is finished with her. Try to cheer her up." Retribution. Sandoval looked down the street where Eli Jensen and his followers were sitting. A dozen more council police had arrived along with more sheriff deputies. He talked with Sheriff Abbott, and they waited an hour for the arrival of the town council. 10 council members arrived and held a short meeting that Abbott listened in on. A discussion was held, reviewed, and the council voted unanimously and adjourned their meeting. The council members went back to their cars and left. Sandoval looked at Abbott. "Jesse, you all right with this?" Sheriff Abbott gave an approving nod. "No skin off my back. No objections." Sandoval walked over to the Jensen's congregation and instructed them to follow deputies to their congregational hall where there would be an emergency meeting at 5 p.m. He also instructed them to notify all their members to be at the meeting, which was mandatory. The congregation hall was a 5-minute walk away. During the walk, the congregational members were busy talking among themselves. When they arrived at the hall, Eli unlocked the front door, and a few of his followers opened the other doors and walked inside, followed by 2 deputies. Eli and a few of his followers positioned themselves in front of the deputies, stopping their entry. "Whoa, whoa, whoa! You guys are forbidden to enter here. This is a sacred place, and non-members are not allowed in," Eli loudly boasted. Eli's outburst got Sandoval's attention. "Mr. Jensen, I'm not sure you understand. Didn't you and your members here just kill that family and beat that girl?" Eli yelled at Sandoval. "That girl! That girl corrupted my sons! That half—" Eli stopped before finishing his sentence when he noticed an angry stare from Sandoval. Sandoval cocked his head, and the other council police members knew what that meant. It was a tell of Sandoval's when he was angry. "It's okay, Mr. Jensen. You can finish what you were going to say. You can go ahead and say it. Half-breed, right?" Eli knew he had made a mistake as Sandoval's glare turned steely, and the other council police members, whose numbers had increased to 15, closed in. "Mr. Jensen, you don't seem to understand what's going on here." Sandoval glanced over the crowd. "You and your congregation members burned a house down, murdering 3 people. Sandoval had angry tears flowing from his eyes as he stared down Eli and the members of his congregation and amplified his voice. "One of them was a 12-year-old boy who tried to escape the burning house, and all of you listened to him screaming, watched him burn, and did nothing to help him." The congregation members did not notice that while Sandoval was speaking, the council police and some of the deputies had maneuvered themselves behind the crowd. Sandoval walked through the crowd toward the back as the congregation members followed his movement and yelled out, "You all need to know something. Y'all need to know something. I believe in God. I believe in heaven and hell. I believe in right and wrong, just like you claim to do. But there's nothing sacred about this building, unless it's a safe haven for the devil himself, because what y'all did here today is demonic." Sandoval motioned Eli and his followers to finish coming inside as they were ushered in by the council police and deputies. An hour later, at the hospital, Kelly was in a hospital bed when 2 men and a woman entered her room. "Hello, Kelly, you poor thing. Little sister, how are you feeling?" Kelly didn't answer as she coldly observed them. "We're here to pick you up, and we'll take care of you from now on." "Who are you?" "I'm Sister Sharon, your father's other wife, and we're going to let you stay with us now." Kelly was puzzled by this Sharon woman. Then she noticed that Sandoval had walked up and was standing outside the door with a couple of deputies. "All right, young lady, let's get dressed," Sharon instructed. "I don't think so," Sandoval told them. Upon hearing Sandoval's voice, they turned, and the 2 men tried to leave the room but were stopped by Sandoval and the deputies. The deputies placed handcuffs on the 2 men. Sandoval told them, "Attempting to kidnap this young girl, that's a crime. That will have to wait for now because you have a mandatory meeting to be at over at the congregation hall." The deputies escorted the woman and 2 men out of the room. Sandoval sat on the edge of the bed and held Kelly's hand and told her that if it was all right with her, he and his wife were going to take her in and look after her. Kelly agreed. By 5 o'clock, Sandoval was back at the hall. The hall was filled with almost 200 members. Sandoval approached Sheriff Abbott. "Jesse, they all here?" "Almost, and I'm surprised. I would have thought a lot more would have skipped town, but from what we can tell, checking the church rolls, they're all here except for 2. 2? The 2 Jensen boys. They grabbed their dad's car and hightailed it out of town." "That's probably best." I think so. Those boys weren't out there when they burned that house down. It was probably hell for them living with that man. Anyway, we've got a roadblock set up at the edge of town. Unless they live here, nobody's coming in this town tonight. Good. Thank you, Jesse. My pleasure, William. Sandoval walked to the front of the congregation, hearing the grumblings of the members as he passed by. When he reached the front, he stepped up on the stage area where Jensen was starting to rant. We've been talking, and this is an outrage. This is an abomination. You have no... Sandoval raised his shotgun and placed it on Eli's chest, resulting in his instant silence and gasps from the congregation. Sandoval stepped back a few steps and lowered the shotgun. Abomination? I'll tell you what abomination is. You, Mr. Jensen, you're an abomination, a murderer, hijacker of religion, and you're not even a real Mormon. You people were expelled from your church 150 years ago. Sandoval surveyed the congregation members who were expressing bewilderment. Your ancestors were kicked out of the Mormon church, headed south, and ended up here, where they were taken in, which in hindsight was poor judgment by our ancestors. It didn't take long for your ancestors to start problems here and commit horrific acts. An emotional Sandoval paced back and forth across the stage as he spoke. Y'all know Carolina Park and that statue over there. The plaque on the statue is dedicated to an old woman named Rose Carolina, a woman who was condemned to death by your ancestors for witchcraft, a woman who was a medicine woman in our tribe. Sandoval continued to pace as he got angrier with every sentence. I'll have you know that today was not the first time that you burned people to death. 140 years ago, you did it a few times. You burned Rose Carolina and her grandkids. Burned them just like you did with that family today. Sandoval raised the shotgun and fired a blast into the ceiling and yelled, Mr. Jensen, don't accuse us of abominations. Sandoval looked out upon the congregation. After tonight, you'll have a whole new concept of what an abomination is. After tonight, you'll know what an abomination of biblical proportions is all about. Chatter broke out as Sandoval's revenge speech shook up the congregation. A nervous Jensen got his courage up to say, You can't burn us. That would be barbaric. Sandoval lashed out. Barbaric? Barbaric is watching a 12-year-old boy burn to death on his front steps, and you and your congregation did nothing except chant, Burn, burn, burn. Sandoval nodded at the council police. They walked up to Jensen and placed him and his wife in handcuffs, along with one other woman of the congregation who was seen as an agitator of the mob and inciter of the fire. Sandoval yelled, Exodus 21 and Leviticus 24 pretty much says the same thing, an eye for an eye, or anyone who injures their neighbor is to be injured in the same manner. The congregation fell silent. Seems fair, right? The 3 you burned today for these 3? A fair trade. As the 3 were taken out of the hall, the remaining members nervously talked among themselves. Sandoval stood center stage and waited for the congregation to be silent and turn their attention to him. It may not seem like it now, but you have been blessed today because there was a meeting of the town council outside, and I wanted to lock all of you up in here and burn this church to the ground with you in it. Gasps, cries, and an assortment of outbursts and cries of, Jesus help us, filled the building. But the Christian part of me had a change of heart. And yes, Mr. Jensen and his wife and the other woman, all 3 of them, are on their way to his house, and that house will burn, burn, burn. As for the rest of you, you get a pass. God has given you the opportunity to leave this town and never come back. All you have to do is leave this building now. Go straight home." After a purposeful, dramatic pause, he continued, "Right now, it's 5:15. So by 6 o'clock, oh well, I'll tell you what. Let's say 7. That's it. 7 o'clock. At 7 o'clock, do not be in your house. Do not be in this town. Get in your cars and get out of town and never come back. That's the deal." Sandoval looked out on the congregation as they stood in disbelief, whispering. Sandoval fired a shotgun at the ceiling. "That's the deal, everyone. You could stay in this building if you want." Sandoval tossed off as he left the stage. "That's up to you, but if you stay in this building, it's going to be on fire in 5 minutes." As Sandoval approached the door, a few members rushed past him, although the majority were still inside digesting Sandoval's words. Sandoval gave the go-ahead to the fire department chief, who in turn nodded to his men. Several of the firefighters walked to the sides of the church building with fire starter kits. A few minutes later, the church was on fire, and the remaining congregation members raced out. Sandoval went to Jensen's house, and when he entered, Jensen and the 2 women were tied to chairs. Upon seeing Sandoval, they began to yell profanities and Bible verses. "That's not going to help you today. I've used a lot of restraint today. My initial impulse was to tear you apart, take out the old hunting knife and start carving. But I practiced restraint. Even though we're going to burn you up in this house, I will give you the opportunity to ask me to shoot you if you wish." Sandoval stepped away from Jensen and asked the 2 women if they wanted him to shoot them. Mrs. Jensen gave a reluctant nod. The other woman yelled, "You can take your Injun ass and the rest of your Injun friends and go straight to hell." "You first," he replied as he shot her in the foot. As she screamed in pain, Sandoval told her, "But you're gonna burn in agony first." Sandoval looked at Mrs. Jensen, who was crying. She glanced out the window where she saw the flames and heard the crackling of burning wood. She looked at Sandoval and closed her eyes. After shooting Mrs. Jensen, Sandoval reloaded the shotgun while he looked at Eli Jensen. "You haven't asked about your boys." Jensen started to plead, begging Sandoval not to hurt his boys. Sandoval cackled. "I'm not gonna hurt your boys. They're the smart ones in your family. They took your car and left town. So, if there's any consolation, your boys are safe. As for you, against my better judgment, I had mercy on your wife." "Oh, hell." Sandoval stepped back, turned to the other woman and shot her dead. "Like I said, against my better judgment, you deserve to burn, but I'm not going to do that. No one deserves to be burned alive. And so I'll postpone your torment from burning. It's good enough knowing you're going to burn in hell forever." Jensen got angry and started to say something, but Sandoval interrupted with a pull of the trigger. Sandoval walked outside and stood in front of the house, experiencing conflicting emotions. He felt sorry for the Ford family, especially the boy. However, he had a sense of guilt about Jensen while also feeling relieved. The council decision was final and had to be followed. It was tradition. Although tradition did not erase the feeling of guilt for killing others. Behind him, the glow of the fire cast a yellow orangeness in the early night sky. He looked down the road at the burning congregation hall lighting up the sky with an eerie red glow. A couple of the council police approached Sandoval. One of them, Dan, asked, "You all right, William?" "Yes, fine. I'm not having second thoughts, but still, taking lives, even lives of those who deserve it, bothers me." Dan earnestly told Sandoval, "We understand that, but if there was ever a group that deserved to die, it's these. You told them about Rose and her grandkids. That was only 3. Over the years, before there was a stop to it, they burned at least 50 or maybe 100. I don't know. They were fanatical. Why they were allowed to get away with it? Who knows? Why? Why do people do what they do or not do? It's beyond me. He glanced around to see dozens of fires throughout the neighborhood. Within an hour, over 50 houses were burning. A half hour later, at the roadblock at the edge of town, Sheriff Abbott and his deputies watched a convoy of fire trucks from neighboring communities approach. They were turned away, and throughout the evening, more fire trucks were turned away. An estimated 70 homes were burning by 10 that night. The sky over Farmerville was glowing red and observed from miles away. The 10 o'clock news broadcast from the Cape Girardeau news stations showed the red sky over Farmersville from a distance. By the next morning, the congregation hall and 73 houses had burned to the ground. Although the residents were warned to leave, there were loyal Jensen followers who refused to leave and made the decision to stay in their homes. Despite efforts by council police to persuade parents to let their children go, 8 children were among the 27 who perished, forced by their fanatical parents to stay. After a long and troubling night, William Sandoval went home. He got out of his car and saw someone sitting on his front steps. Initially, he thought it was Kelly. As he approached the steps, he stopped, shocked. "Rose, what are you doing here?" "Hello, William. From your porch here. It's the best view of the show. And I will tell you," Rose started, her words accompanied by an eerie, cynical laugh, "that it's very different being at the other end of the fire stick. Very different. I haven't been this happy, William, in a very long time. I just wanted to thank you." William had chills as Rose stood up and walked away laughing. William walked inside and was greeted by his wife, Sequoia. As they talked, they heard Kelly go out the front door. She stood on the front porch looking at the smoke from the other side of town. She felt an odd sense of satisfaction as she felt the presence of William behind her. "Who was that woman sitting out here when you came home, Mr. Sandoval?" William was surprised to find out Kelly could see Rose. "Her name is Rose. She's an old soul. I'll tell you what. You don't have to call me Mr. Sandoval. How about we go with Uncle William and Aunt Sequoia? Will that work?" She turned and gave him a tearful smile. She responded with a hug. Present day, back at the diner. "Ron, did you marry me because you love me? Or did you marry me because of the things that happened back then?" Ron teared up. "Kelly, babe, I loved you. I was stupid, crazy, mad in love with you. I fell in love with you the very first time I saw you, standing naked on your front steps." Kelly cracked a smile as they tearfully gazed at each other, holding hands across the table. "Do you still love me?" Ron squeezed Kelly's hands. "Yes, I still love you. I will always love you, no matter what." "We did good, didn't we? With Anna and Laura?" "We did. We just gotta make sure Laura's okay." Ron had a sudden concern and wondered if Laura had made an appointment with Dr. Rayford. He texted Laura to ask if she had made her appointment. Laura answered and told Ron that she couldn't find the address. He didn't have the heart to explain to her that the doctor didn't exist. Ron and Kelly said their goodbyes, and Ron hurried to get to the station for the 5 o'clock meeting. Although Ron had wanted to talk to Kelly more, he was fine with leaving it be for now. He was feeling sentimental and was more concerned about Laura. And he wanted to talk to Billy about Rose and his dream. A drowning revelation. Ron arrived at the station a few minutes early and found Billy. "Billy, I really need to talk to you. Please don't walk away this time, but I need to talk to you about Rose and that dream I had." Billy listened as Ron told him about the dream and told him about what he and Kelly had discovered today about themselves sitting in a parking lot for therapy sessions. Billy expressed an occasional smile and light laugh as Ron told him all the details. "I'm sorry, Ron, but you were always really good at repressing stuff. You've always known Rose was a ghost. Some people see her, some people don't." Billy looked around the office. "Hey, Ken, you've heard us talk about Rose. Have you ever seen her?" "No, I've heard you guys mention her, but for the life of me, never seen her or even know who she is." "See, Ron, and why she's here and what she's up to, no one knows. Have you ever read the plaque at Carolina Park by her statue?" Ron thought about it. "You see, it's things like that I've never noticed. That statue, that plaque. I've been stopping there 2 to 3 times a week and never seen it." Ron laughed at himself. Billy raised his voice and said sternly, "Rose has always been a ghost, and you and me, some of the other guys, we all figured it out back then. When you get some time, stop back at the park and read that plaque. May explain why she hangs around," Billy told him ominously. "Come on," Ron said as he tried to shrug off the chill Billy's voice gave him. "Okay, I will. But that dream?" Billy calmed down as he gave Ron a one-armed brotherly hug. "Those shrinks, the real ones and the imaginary one, haven't helped you a bit with repressed memories. I know it was dramatic, but if you're having dreams about it, something's happening with you." "What, Billy? Tell me already." Billy suddenly turned emotional. "It wasn't a dream. It was real. It happened about 1.5 years after you first met Kelly." Billy considered not telling Ron the rest for a moment. "It was real. You were being drowned. It really happened. That man drowning you was your dad trying to kill you." "What?" "Your dad, who, as you know, was also a sheriff's deputy here. Kelly was there. She was trying to stop him until I showed up and pushed him off you. Rose was there too. She showed herself to him, which scared the shit out of him. Just long enough, for a few seconds, for my dad to get there and confront him. But your dad, he was determined to kill you. He pulled his pistol, aimed it at your head, and was going to shoot you, till my old man shot him first." Billy watched Ron for a reaction. No reaction. "You're a mess, Ron. You saw your dad killed right in front of you, but it was worse than that. He killed your mom and little sister, too." Billy stopped, observing Ron's blank, emotionless stare. "Ron, come on. This is what you did back then, too. A day later, you acted like nothing had happened. I know you remember what happened, and I have no idea why it's all being stirred up again." Billy was agitated but sympathetic. "I love you, Ron. You're my brother. We all love you. We took you in after that until you left for the army, and we will always have your back." "There's some dark shit," Tom said lightheartedly. Billy and Ron realized they had an audience with Tom, Ken, Keisha, Mitchell, and Phillips in attendance. Like a light switch, Billy flipped to the comedic side of his personality with a short laugh. "That's it, everyone, for part 1. More to come in part 2. Keisha jokingly said, "Hell no, I don't want to see a part 2. Part 1 sounds too much like a Dr. Phil episode." Ron laughed at Keisha, which helped to lighten the mood in the room. "Okay, Ron, what?" Keisha asked. Ron shook his head as he laughed and looked around the room. "It was just funny mentioning Dr. Phil. You know, when I was tied to that chair in the Holcomb's kill room and they were getting ready to kill that girl, I looked at Holcomb and told him, Not even Dr. Phil could fix this." Despite their attempts not to laugh, they couldn't help themselves. After the laughter subsided, they took their seats for the meeting. Ron smiled at Billy. "Thank you. I know I hold a lot back, but I do appreciate everything you've done for me. Love you too." Afternoon meeting. Phillips started the meeting. "All right, everyone. Few things to go over, but first things first. We've released Kevin Osgood. Turns out, other than embezzling, that was it. He had no idea what Valkyrie was other than it was a federal facility. This afternoon, we arranged for an expedited hearing with a judge and federal prosecutor and worked out a plea deal for probation and to pay restitution. That's one item we can check off our list and move forward." Phillips briefed them on the ongoing child porn and trafficking investigation that Agent Grayson was working on. Phillips paused for a moment and then somberly told them, "It's Monday, right? Maybe if we get one more thing wrapped up, everyone can have a good Thanksgiving." Phillips continued, "Like I've been telling you, our teams have been working on the videos from the Holcomb farm for 3 weeks. Well, I guess 4 weeks come Friday. We have what we're calling a guest list. The Holcombs were not only doing what they were doing by themselves. Every month or two, they would have guests who paid money to the tune of $1,000 to $5,000 to attend and participate. So far, we've identified 11 of these guests, and 3 more we're still working on. There's one more guest I'm pretty sure we know who it is, but we need to make sure." Phillips set up the monitor to show a video. "I'm going to show you a few seconds of a video here, but first, I'll explain what's going on. Most of these guests participated with the Holcombs, engaging in sexual assault, abuse, and torture of their victims before they killed them. Sometimes they would just kill the person right away, like they were going to do that night when Ron was there, but most times they engaged in the sexual acts and then killed them. I'm going to warn you up front that what I'm going to show you in the next video is not pleasant. There's a woman guest wearing a mask whom we're pretty sure we know who she is, but we still need to confirm." Phillips addressed Keisha. "Keisha, if you want to step out for a few minutes, you can because, like I said, what's in here, it's not easy to watch." Keisha stayed, and Phillips started the video. The video showed a naked female victim strapped to the kill table. Dwayne Holcomb, Cindy, and Shanna were half naked and were busy taunting the victim. Dwayne looked toward the corner of the room, which was out of the view of the camera, and said, "Your turn, young lady. Get over here." The figure of a naked black woman wearing a mask, her back toward the camera, walked to and sprang up on the table, straddling the victim. The woman then slowly slid toward the victim's head until she was straddled over her face. Phillips stopped the video. "You can see this woman's wearing a mask, but we're pretty sure we know who it is." "You motherfucker!" Keisha yelled at Phillips. "You know who it is. You knew I'd recognize that tattoo on her ass. You just wanted me to confirm it, right?" "Sorry, Keisha. We suspected it was her, but we had to make sure." Ken was off his game and slow to what was going on. "Okay, you got me. Who? What?" Keisha yelled. "It's Jenna Johnson, Ken." "Well, I could say I'm surprised, but these past 3 weeks, nothing surprises me." "Come on already," Ron bellowed. "Really, Ron? This surprises you?" "Hell no. What that girl did doesn't surprise me a bit. I'm just ranting because... What are we going to do with her? I'm thinking it's going to be one of 2 options, both of which I don't like." Phillips started to pack up his bag. You know, there's a difference between people who can't keep secrets or expose them and those who are things like child molesters, rapists, murderers, or sadistic fucks like the Holcombs and this Johnson girl. Big difference. I'm not going to show you the rest of this video, but that girl is twisted, pure evil. She loved what she did. Phillips did not show them the rest of the video, although he did summarize that Jenny participated in sexual acts with the victim and in killing her. She was seen planting a video transmitter in the kill room that the Holcombs discovered later that night after Johnson had left. Phillips further explained that the transmitter was set up to transmit to Jerome Whitaker. "Get out!" Tom exclaimed. Yes, Mr. Whitaker. He knew more than we pretended we didn't know. He acted innocent, but I didn't believe him. We just needed to get some more facts together, and he pretty much confirmed it when he tried to get on a plane to leave the country a few hours ago. Phillips smiled and continued, starting with his line, "Yes, folks, it just keeps on getting better." And here's another unexpected twist. Whitaker was one of the guests at the farm before Miss Johnson. He introduced her to it. Of course, that's no defense for what she did, but it looks like he gave her an assignment to come to Farmerville, and unfortunately, Phillips looked at Keisha. The assignment in part was for her to move here and find a source, which, sorry again, Keisha, was you. Of course, it didn't work, but if it hadn't been for those two escaped convicts, we probably never would have found out what was going on at that farm until Whitaker and Johnson broke the story and got themselves a Pulitzer for their investigative reporting and exposing a serial-killing family. Unbelievable. That was their plan. Their emails and texts showed us that. And that act he put on about being surprised by Johnson's relationship with Keisha, that was also part of the plan. Again, sorry, Keisha. Keisha projected a carefree attitude and relaxed mood. That's okay. It's like what Ken said earlier. After everything these last few weeks, nothing surprises me. So, let's finish up because I'm hungry. I need some dinner. Mitchell told them, "We already talked with Kilcullen on this, and given the Valkyrie connection, he said you would know what to do." Mitchell checked her phone for messages. "Well, there's no flight for Gitmo scheduled. I'm assuming that means Kilcullen made a decision in a roundabout way by leaving one option." She put her phone away and packed her bag. Phillips received a text on his phone and smiled. "One more last-minute thing. Mr. Whitaker is 5 minutes out and will be taken to Valkyrie." "That was fast," Mitchell added. "What?" Ron asked. Mitchell looked at Ron and the others. "General Kilcullen was briefed on Whitaker, and like I said, no Gitmo flights, so same for him, all right?" Everyone gave a reluctant nod, except for Keisha, as Mitchell and Phillips left. Keisha asked, "What are you guys talking about? What's she talking about?" No one answered Keisha as Ron glanced at Billy and then Tom. "Tom, don't know if you agree or not, and I know we were not happy the other night, but for some reason, I don't feel so bad about it this time. You know, knowing what they've done." "Same here. It's kind of weird, but yeah, I'm fine with it." Billy smiled at them. "You guys crack me up." "What are you guys talking about? What option? If it was up to me, I'd put a bullet in her head," Keisha said jokingly. The guys laughed and Billy told her, "I think you could do that, Keisha. I don't see a problem with that at all. But what are we going to do with the body?" They continued to laugh, and then Ken walked by saying, "I'm leaving. You figure it out." Keisha was confused. "Where's he going? And what are you guys talking about? Anyway, I'm hungry." "You might want to wait a few hours on dinner," Tom suggested. A drowning revelation. Ron walked Keisha to the corner of the room where he leaned into her ear and whispered for a minute as Billy and Tom watched. They knew Ron was telling Keisha about the pig farm, confirmed by Keisha's glimpses toward them. When Ron finished, Billy announced, "It'll be good and dark by 7, so let's plan on leaving then." As 7 o'clock approached, Tom and Billy moved Jenny from the cell to an interview room where they handcuffed her to the table. Jenny kept asking them what was going on, and they told her she would know in a few minutes when Keisha would be in to see her. A few minutes later, Keisha entered the interview room. Jenny burst into tears, pleading with Keisha. "Babe, what's going on? No one said a word to me. I've been here all day, and no one told me anything other than to shut my mouth." Keisha smiled and gave Jenny a knowing look as she placed the listening devices on the table. "Girl, you know what you've done." Jenny knew she had been caught and tried to say something, but Keisha stopped her and watched her flip from the sweet, innocent Jenny she knew to a thug persona. "I had you in my house with my kids. I trusted you. They're just bugs, no harm, just for listening, okay?" she told Keisha with a little smile. Then she tried the flirting approach. "Don't get your panties in a bunch, babe. I love you. I'm not talking about the damn bugs. I'm talking about the Holcomb farm. I'm talking about how I watched a video this afternoon of you. Did you know the Holcomb's kill shop had cameras everywhere? Whoever was there, including you, was recorded. Everything they did, everyone they butchered, including what you did the night you were there, was recorded, including you planting a video transmitter, which I guess is what you were looking for the other night after I told you I had to go to work." Jenny's transition from sweet Jenny to thug to flirt now switched to scared Jenny, realizing she had been found out. As Keisha left the room, she turned and stared down Jenny. "Oh, and Jerome, he's been found out too, and whether it even matters, I really did like you." Jenny sat in silence and anger. At 7 o'clock, Billy and Keisha entered the interview room. Billy had a roll of duct tape with him and tore off a piece. Jenny immediately started yelling. "I know, Miss Johnson, but right now, you've pretty much proven my point on why we need to put this tape over your mouth." Billy put the tape on her mouth and then put a black bag over her head. They walked Jenny out the back door and put her in the back of Billy's cruiser. Billy looked at Keisha. "Seriously, you don't need to go out with us. Ron and Tom are picking up Whitaker from Valkyrie and are going to meet me out there." I know. I'll think about it." Billy left and Keisha went back inside the station. During the drive to the Holcomb farm, Jenny was nonstop screaming under the tape and kicking. When Billy stopped and turned the engine off, she stopped. Ron and Tom pulled up as Billy got out of his cruiser. They got Whitaker out of the cruiser and walked him to the fence and did the routine of handcuffing him and telling him to strip. They made a point to make sure he was on the inside of the fence. Billy went back to his cruiser and got Jenny out. He took the bag off her head, and she immediately fell into a panic and tried to fight and get away. Ron and Tom helped carry her to the fence. They took the tape off her mouth, and she started yelling and making racist accusations. Billy took his pistol out and pointed it at Jenny's head and ordered her to strip. As she got undressed, she argued with Whitaker. They both switched from arguing to pleading for their lives, all the while agitating the pigs in the barn. An approaching vehicle caught their attention. When Keisha got out of her cruiser, Jenny yelled for help. "Keisha, help me please." As Keisha approached the fence, she was apprehensive and frightened by the scene, while Jenny continuously pleaded. Whitaker and Jenny's bickering and pleading irritated everyone, especially Ron. He angrily pulled out his pistol and pointed it toward Whitaker and Jenny. "Shut up already! Shut up! What is wrong with you two? Did you have any mercy for those girls you butchered? Fuck!" Billy glowered at Jenny and Whitaker. "You two managed to do something rarely done. You've got Ron rattled. By the way, Miss Johnson, all that racist shit you've been screaming? The pig farm is a no-discrimination zone. Nothing racist about this. No, this is pure retribution, Miss Johnson. Pure retribution. Leviticus-type shit." Billy picked up Jenny's clothes, walked to the fire barrel, tossed the clothes in, and on his way back yelled, "This may seem sadistic, it may seem wrong, but just consider this as a going-away gift to remind you why you're burning in hell. You're lucky my dad isn't here. If it was my dad standing here, he'd be setting your ass on fire. Literally, he'd burn you alive." Billy took a long pause, then called out, "Suey, Suey, Suey, Suey." In perfect harmony, the pigs raced out of the barn, singing their squeals and oinks as they charged Whitaker and Jenny for their evening snack. Their attempts to climb the fence were unsuccessful due to the chomping on their feet and legs. Billy gave Ron a nod, and he pulled his pistol out, aimed at Whitaker, and shot him in the head. He then took a quick sidestep and aimed at Jenny. Keisha tapped Ron's arm to put the pistol down as she pulled her pistol out and gave Jenny a momentary sympathetic glance before pulling the trigger. They turned and walked back to their cruisers. Keisha was disturbed, holding back tears, but she blurted out, "They had it coming." Ron knew it was bothering her. "Keisha, you're right, they had it coming. You're a good woman, Keisha. This bothering you? It's supposed to. If it doesn't, then there's something wrong." As they approached the cruisers, Billy told them, "I'll catch up to you. I gotta go back and get something." Keisha stopped and started to turn around, but Ron told her not to look and to get in her cruiser. A moment later, the squeals and oinks of the pigs fighting over the scraps gave Keisha a start, and she glanced back, but quickly turned away. "I told you not to look." One more thing. When Ron, Tom, Billy, and Keisha arrived back to the station, Phillips was there with Ken. Ron regarded Phillips with suspicion and asked, "What brings you back out tonight?" Before Phillips said anything, Keisha had a mini rant. "What else? What else? What now?" Phillips smiled. "I know. So Agent Grayson's investigation has turned up quite a few characters, but there's one in particular I thought it'd be best we talk about right away." Mitchell walked in. "Am I late?" "Just in time. I was getting ready to tell them." "All right. So we got an IP address to a Farmerville residence, and a search of their hard drive turned up child porn." "You're joking, right? You wouldn't be telling us unless it was somebody we knew or something, right?" Ron asked. "I'm sorry, guys, but yeah, you're right." The room was silent as Ron and the others thought about who it could be. Who did they know that could possibly be involved in child porn? Could it be someone in this room? It troubled Ron, and although it was only a few seconds, it felt like hours before Phillips told them. "I'm sorry, guys. Plus, there's a Valkyrie connection, too. It's Joseph O'Malley, Father O'Malley." "Jesus Christ!" Keisha bellowed. "A priest? A priest?" Keisha was clearly upset about the news. Keisha noticed Billy shaking his head and smiling. "There's nothing funny about this, Billy." "Keisha, you're right. Nothing funny. But there is good news about this." "How can it be good news? It's a priest, the church, and we don't know if we're also talking about molestation or any of that." Phillips interjected. "Everything we've been able to find shows that there's no indication of any molestation or any of that going on, strictly the porn, which is bad enough." Billy nodded. "That's good, but still." "But still what? How can it be good news about a priest and child porn?" Billy smiled and closed the gap with Keisha. "Come here, Keisha," he said gently as he pulled her in for a one-armed brotherly hug. "I'm sorry. I know you've been through the ringer these past few weeks, and this child porn thing in O'Malley is not funny. We all know that. But the one good thing about this, the thing with O'Malley, or a saving grace if we look at it that way, is Joseph O'Malley, Father O'Malley, he's not a real priest."
That was part 6 of Farmerville, where secrets deepen, alliances falter, and the veil between reality and the unknown begins to tear. A big thank you to Marty Martin for crafting this sinister continuation of the series. But don't get too comfortable. We're not done yet. Coming up next is part 7, entitled Amber Alert, where the horrors of Farmerville reach new, harrowing depths. In part 7 of Farmerville, the tension escalates as the town faces an unimaginable crisis. What began as a seemingly ordinary day spirals into chaos, revealing that the darkness of Farmerville isn't confined to its past. It's a living, breathing force. Without further delay, I present to you Amber Alert.
Our narrator. In the 4th week after the serial-killing Holcomb family was discovered, the ever-evolving story surrounding Farmerville continues with surprising revelations. A supernatural connection was introduced, and what happens next will surely be unforeseen and escalates to an unreal and grotesque outcome that will take Farmerville back into the national spotlight. If you've missed keeping up with the climbing body count that's up to 32, not including the 200 at the farm, don't worry. There'll be more. A lot more. He's not a priest. Monday, Thanksgiving week, evening. Phillips continued. I'm sorry, guys. There's a Valkyrie connection too. It's Joseph O'Malley, Father O'Malley. Jesus Christ, Keisha bellowed. A priest, a priest. Keisha was more than just upset about the news. Keisha noticed Billy shaking his head and smiling. There's nothing funny about this, Billy. Keisha, you're right. Nothing funny. But there is good news about this. How can there be good news? It's a priest. A priest, the church, and we don't know if we're also talking about molestation or any of that. Phillips interjected. Everything we've been able to find shows that there's no indication of any molestation or any of that going on. Strictly the porn, which is bad enough. Billy nodded. That's good. Good. But still... But still what? How could there be good news about a priest and child porn? Billy smiled and closed the gap with Keisha. Come here, Keisha, he said gently, as he pulled her in for a one-armed brotherly hug. I'm sorry. I know you've been through the ringer these past few weeks, and this child porn thing in O'Malley is not funny. We all know that. But the one good thing about this, the thing with O'Malley, or a saving grace if we look at it that way, is Father O'Malley. He's not a real priest. Not a real priest? Not a real priest. What do you mean he's not a real priest? I'll let Ken tell you about that one. What? Ken, what the hell's he talking about? She glanced around the room and got the impression that she was the only one not in on the secret until Tom chimed in. I'm with Keisha on this one. How or why is a priest not a priest? Doesn't make much sense. Ken addressed them. One word, just one word. Valkyrie. Tom followed with a sarcastic comment. Okay, now I see it. I don't see it, Keisha yelled out. Ken explained that there had been a Catholic church in town for decades until the mid-1990s when it was learned that the priest had been molesting kids. When the word got out, the church was burned to the ground with the priest inside, and the Catholic church was never allowed back in the town. Really? They burned the church down and killed the priest. How'd they get away with that? Billy smiled. Keisha, remember the other night when I said if my dad were there, he would literally set them on fire? No joke. My dad was still the chief of council police back then. And like I've said before, tribal law trumps everything else. Besides, that priest was guilty. He admitted it. There were 7 or 8 kids he molested, and when that was found out, a few of the adults stepped forward that were molested by him years earlier when they were kids. That priest had been here 20 years doing that shit, so there was no doubt. With a hint of cynicism, Ken told them, "When Valkyrie came to town, someone had the brilliant idea to bring a new Catholic church in and have someone impersonate a priest under the pretense that it was protecting Valkyrie, which I'll admit kind of worked out here this past month. But before that, we never got anything other than small, insignificant crap. I never really understood why they did this. O'Malley was the 3rd guy we've had in here. The other 2 just up and quit. They just got tired of listening to all the crap in those confessions." "This is insanity," Keisha thundered. Ron was troubled, upset, and with a tone of condemnation said to Phillips, "Phillips, tell me something. Are we sure it's child porn? A lot of people look at porn, and there's a big difference with kiddie porn. But are we sure?" His computer IP address came up in the search, connecting it with Spencer, and other than that, I don't know exactly what's on the computer. But his IP address was directly linked. The address? That's it? We all know an IP address don't mean anything because you click on something and then you close it out. So tell me there's actual child porn on his computer. Ron, I really don't know. I just went by what the tech people told me, and right now, O'Malley's in a cell in the back. But what? What do you mean he's in the back? You don't even know what's on his computer and you got him locked up. Why didn't you just put him in the conference room and wait until you found out? As Ron yelled, Ken glared at Phillips. What do you mean you got him in a cell? When we brought him in, you weren't here, so we put him in a cell. Phillips sensed outrage in the room. Ron was fuming. If he's really into child stuff, he needs to be locked up and needs to be shot. But are we sure? What did he say? He denied it, but let me make a phone call. Phillips called his tech person, had a short conversation, then told the room that O'Malley's name came up as one of the IPs that were in a chain of IPs connected with Spencer. He clarified that they had not looked at any specifics on the computer. Damn it! You see, until someone looks, we're not really sure, and I'm not saying he did or didn't. I'm just saying he's a good dude, and, oh yeah, I know good dudes do bad things, but it just don't add up, Ron complained. Billy lashed out. I'm sorry, guys. I know I was joking earlier about him not being a priest, but this shit ain't funny anymore. As conversations and arguments continued, Phillips received a phone call and stepped out. A minute later, he came back in. That was my tech gal, and no child porn on O'Malley's computer. Ron exploded as he headed to O'Malley's cell. I'm gonna let him out. A minute later, Ron's voice echoed from the back of the building. God damn it! Billy and Tom immediately ran after him, followed by the others. A furious Ron met them at the doorway and pushed his way through. It's too late! Billy and Tom, followed by Keisha, went to O'Malley's cell. They were met by the sight of O'Malley hanging from the upper section of bars with a noose around his neck made from his pant legs. Keisha turned and walked away mumbling. What else? What else? This is just crazy. Ron gave Phillips a hate-filled look as he left the building. Phillips could find nothing to say. He felt immediate remorse, which showed as he walked to the conference room. A somber Ken told Billy and Tom to take O'Malley's body down. Ken followed Phillips to the conference room, closed the door, and had a conversation. A few minutes later, Ken walked out of the conference room. Phillips followed and left the building. Ken called everyone together. All right, everyone. I'm making a decision. I had a talk with Phillips, and Not that it helps matters. He feels pretty bad about what happened. He's not handling it very well, but I really don't give a shit about how he feels. Anyway, according to Phillips, General Kilcullen and Mitchell weren't told about O'Malley being picked up. But something has to be done, and it's not going to be the story that he hung himself, so what we're going to do is take O'Malley's body over to the church, and we're going to burn the church down and make it look like O'Malley died in the fire. I didn't tell Phillips about this. My decision.
What?
Keisha murmured. I know, but he shouldn't have been in that cell in the first place, and we got to keep the Valkyrie connection. All that crap, under wraps. I'll update General Kilcullen in the morning, but that's what we're going to do. At least this way, we can have a decent send-off versus him being accused of being a pedophile or something. That's what we're doing. O'Malley's body was taken to the church, and Ken called the fire chief and Billy's dad and updated them on what was to happen. Ken also instructed the fire chief that he was to allow the church to burn to the ground. Ken called Ron and gave him an update. Tuesday morning. Ron woke up at the 5:30 a.m. alarm, but as he sat up in bed, he realized Kelly wasn't there. He found her sitting at the kitchen table. Morning. Why are you up so early? A curious Ron asked. Kelly didn't answer, but her face expressed concern.
I've got a bad feeling. I've been getting these feelings ever since the Holcomb thing happened. Your trips back and forth to Gitmo, all these other strange occurrences, and that thing with Laura at the cave. It really bothered me, her going there. And you know why. And then this weird thing with Rose. What the fuck, Ron? How are you not worked up about this?
Ron laughed a little. You forgot about the open house.
Damn it, Ron.
I know, babe. I don't know what to think.
I'll tell you what I think, and I've told you before. We should have never come back here, and we should leave before something really bad happens to us or Laura. We need to leave. That thing with Rose, I'm sorry, that ain't some coincidence. She did that on purpose, don't you get that? On purpose, deliberate, messing with us. Why haven't you asked yourself why is she doing it?
Ron let out a short, cynical laugh as he told Kelly. It's funny, but not funny that you say something really bad might happen.
What?
O'Malley's dead. Ron told Kelly what had happened with O'Malley, and she started yelling.
We should have never come back here.
An angry Laura walked into the kitchen.
I agree, Mom. We shouldn't have never come back here. What's wrong? Kelly asked. Have you guys seen the news? What news? Father O'Malley's dead, burned up in the church last night.
Ron and Kelly acted surprised and thought Laura had not heard their conversation.
And that's not the worst of it. They're saying it happened again. What happened again?
Laura furiously yelled.
They're saying he might be a pedophile. They're saying that back in the 90s the church was burned to the ground because the priest was a pedophile, and he was burned up inside the church, and now it's happened again.
God damn it! Ron slammed the countertop and left. Ron got in his cruiser and headed straight for the sheriff's station. He went inside looking for Ken. Have you seen the news this morning? What news? There's news about the church, and they're already linking it back to the 90s, saying history's repeating itself and calling O'Malley a pedophile. Ah, shit. I guess I screwed the pooch on this one. Sorry, Ron. I know you liked O'Malley. Yeah, this damn town. Ron grumbled as he left and went back out to his cruiser. Ron had already planned to meet Jack at Carolina Park and hoped to find Rose. Ron met Jack and gave him the rundown on everything that had been going on. Jack was sympathetic. However, his sympathy was interrupted when they saw Rose approaching with her grandkids. Jack got up to leave. Where are you going, Jack? I've told you before. Something about her. He stammered with a nervous laugh. Now we know why, don't we? You know, I like meeting for these little talks we have, but sometimes, Ron,
You're a bit much. I'm sorry, I know. Guys are the only ones I can talk to about some of this stuff. Jack continued to walk off, and Rose sat at the picnic table across from Ron as he brooded. Hello, Ron. How are you doing? Better, but I think you got some explaining to do, don't you? Oh, I'm sorry, Ron. You have to understand. I've been wandering around here over 100 years, and it gets boring. You have to admit that your therapy sessions were helpful, weren't they? We were too freaked out to even think about that. We just don't understand why. You'll understand in time. Ron got agitated. In time? This is crazy. And all those memories popping up and things that are happening. Laura seeing you at the cave and stuff like that. This is crazy, Rose. Rose gave Ron a stern look. That daughter of yours, Laura, she's an innocent. She needs to stay out of that cave, and I think you know why. So don't raise your voice at me. You're here for a reason. You came back to Farmerville. As Rose stood up and started to walk away, she yelled at Ron. You had a choice to come back here. Kelly, too. Don't get upset with me for the choices you two made. Rose, you're not making sense. It's okay, Ron. No time to explain now. You got a meeting to get to. As Rose walked off, Ron got a call from Ken telling him to be at Valkyrie for a 10 a.m. meeting. Valkyrie meeting. Earlier that morning, around 7 o'clock, Ken went to Valkyrie to see Kilcullen and update him on the O'Malley situation. Kilcullen did not take the news well, and after a discussion with Ken and Mitchell, he scheduled a meeting for 10. He instructed Ken to have Ron and Tom present at the meeting. Ron and Tom pulled up in the Valkyrie parking lot and got out of their cruisers. As they walked across the parking lot, they noticed Philip's car was there, and Tom approached Ron. Hey, Ron, you know what this is about? Not really. I'm just assuming they want us to disappear somebody else. Yeah, I know. Shit's getting old. They went inside to the waiting area by Kilcullen's office. Phillips was already waiting. An awkward minute of silence ensued before the door to Kilcullen's office opened and Mitchell told Ron and Tom to step inside. She told Phillips that they would see him in a few minutes. Phillips waited, but couldn't help but feel anxious. He was depressed about what had happened with O'Malley, combined with the coldness he was receiving from everyone. Now paranoia was setting in with the arrival of Ron and Tom. A few minutes passed until Mitchell opened the door and asked Phillips to come inside. Phillips entered the office. Kilcullen was sitting at the end of the conference table and asked Phillips to take a seat at the far end. Mitchell, Ron, and Tom also each took a seat. Phillips was uncharacteristically nervous. Kilcullen looked at Phillips with disappointment. Special Agent Phillips? What the fuck? Phillips, although not surprised, was stumped by Kilcullen's frankness. Don't answer that. O'Malley's death is tragic. I've seen this before, when people feel guilty about a death even though it wasn't their fault. But this situation with O'Malley, this was preventable, and I am angry. Everybody's angry about it. But it's done with. I see it on your face. You regret it. I do. I hate that it happened. I can see that. But it doesn't change the fact that O'Malley's dead. I know you probably got a bunch of squirrels running around in your head right now, but I'll put your mind at ease. You're not here to be disappeared. We've been doing too much of that lately. It's not our mission to be disappearing people. What happened with O'Malley? It's not supposed to happen, and should not have happened. Kilcullen paused for a few seconds, shaking his head. Anyway, I asked you in here this morning because I wanted you to know the official story. O'Malley did not hang himself. He died in the church fire last night, and that's that. Church fire? Yes, they took care of that last night. I wasn't consulted on it until this morning. but it's done." There was another brief pause as Kilcullen glanced at Ken. "Not sure the fire was a good idea, given the history with this town." Kilcullen turned his attention back to Phillips. "The other reason I called you in here is to let you know, quite frankly, you're being fired." Phillips attempted to say something, but Kilcullen continued. "I've already talked with your superiors and made arrangements. Special Agent Grayson will be taking over for you. He's already been read in and instructed to meet you later so you can do a transition. But let's make one thing clear. You are not to go anywhere near the sheriff's station. Stay away, and I'll assume you understand why. Got it?" Phillips was reluctant, although he did give a nod of acknowledgement. Kilcullen stood up and walked Phillips to the door, shook his hand, and gave him a few parting words. Kilcullen closed the door and projected a scoffing smile. "Thank you guys for being here. You never know how people are going to react to things like this, like if they're gonna wig out. Plus, your presence helped prevent any confrontation." Kilcullen let out a slight laugh as he nodded to Ron and Tom. "When he saw you two in here, I'm sure he thought he was on his way to Gitmo. Anyway, thank you." Ron and Tom left the office, walked out to the parking lot to their cruisers, and talked about meeting for lunch. Ron sat in his cruiser for a few minutes, called Kelly, and texted Laura to check on her. Laura replied to his text. "Hey, silly daddy, you do know I'm in class, right? LOL. I'm good. Love you." As he started to pull out of the parking spot, he laughed at Laura's reply and was relieved that it appeared Laura was no longer upset about the O'Malley news. As he approached the exit, he got a fright upon seeing Rose standing by the exit. What's she doing here? The disappearance of Rose was interrupted by the distinctive Amber Alert alarm that blasted from his police radio and cell phone, which, combined with seeing Rose, gave him an uneasy feeling. He looked at the Amber Alert details on the dash computer monitor. As Ron read the details, Tom called him on the police radio asking him to meet at City Hall concerning the Amber Alert. Amber Alert. Ron drove to City Hall and found Tom parked behind the building next to a white pickup truck. Tom looked troubled. "What's up, Tom?" "Yeah, I'm awaited meeting. Passed by here and seen this old white dude and little girl. Looked like a granddad with his grandkid walking down the steps to the maintenance entrance. I didn't think anything of it. But now, I got a bad feeling." Reflecting on seeing Rose and what Kelly had said, Ron also experienced a sinking feeling. As they walked down the steps, Ron called for additional units to come to City Hall. They entered the building and encountered a long hallway. The door to the first room on the left, labeled Maintenance Department, was open. There were no windows in the room and the lights were off. On the far side of the room, a vertical slither of light caught their attention. Tom found a light switch and flipped it on. The maintenance room was large, with lockers, workbenches, and tools. Ron and Tom did a quick walkthrough of the room and then headed to the door where they saw the light. That door's sign read, Tool Room. They opened the door to a smaller room with an array of tools hanging on the walls. Inside the room, there was another door. They opened it and were met with a sudden coolness and odor commonly found in caves. They were surprised to see a cave-like tunnel that had a string of lights. Each of the lights were spread out about 20 to 30 yards and gave the cave a dimly lit appearance. Over the doorway hung a fluorescent light, and to the left was a long work table with another fluorescent light above it. A footlocker-type box was on top of the table with two more underneath it. Ron and Tom made the customary check of the room. Tom opened the box on top. Shit. They looked at each other as they examined the contents of the box, which gave them an unsettling feeling that what they were looking at was a box of mementos. The box was filled with a variety of children's clothing, dresses, underwear, shoes, bracelets, toys, and more. There was an army green satchel that had driver's licenses and other forms of identification and Polaroid pictures, mostly of children. Ron called dispatch to give them an update and ask for more deputies. He had an uncomfortable feeling that prompted him to ask dispatch to notify the FBI. Tom was anxious to go down the tunnel. "We gotta get going. We need to wait a few minutes. The phones and radios don't work down these types of tunnels. I'll tell dispatch to have them hurry." When the other deputies arrived, Tom briefed them, and then Ron and Tom headed down the tunnel. Reluctant, Ron traipsed slowly down the tunnel. Tom noticed Ron's unusual behavior. "Dude, you okay?" Ron gave Tom a pat on the shoulder. "Yeah, just, tight spaces." 10 minutes later, they quietly discussed how far they had walked, estimating they were past the edge of town and heading toward the old mining caves. Ron continued to show signs that he was distressed. "Tom, you know why I don't like caves? When we did the caves back in the stand, I hated it. Not something I liked either." A few minutes later, they stopped when their attention was drawn to a faint sound of unintelligible music. It wasn't just music. It had an echo effect and was slow, like that heard from an old cassette player with a dying battery. They continued forward as the faint music gradually got louder and with the acoustics of the cave echoed through the tunnel. As they progressed, they could barely make out the words to the slow-tempo song that neither of them recognized. A minute later, they looked at each other with knowing expressions and said together, "The sound of silence," followed by a short, quiet laugh. They stopped walking as they looked at each other and listened to the song. Tom said to Ron, "It's really creepy. It's slow-mo and," Ron finished, "disturbing. Get it?" Tom held back an initial impulse to laugh again. "Yeah, Ron, I get it. That metal band, Disturbed. Great version of the song, but this is just too creepy echoing around down here. This would be funny if it wasn't. It's not funny, Ron. We need to keep moving." They continued to move forward as the music continued to play. A few minutes later, another song started to play that Ron recognized. "You gotta be shitting me," Ron blurted out. "What?" "Damn Alice Cooper song, also played in creepy slow-mo." "Damn, have you heard it?" "No, but you're right. Creepy. Sick. It's called I Love the Dead. It's a really strange song. This is too weird and screwed up." A few minutes later, in the distance, a faint image of a man standing by a table, his back toward them, slowly came into focus. They saw something sticking up from the table that appeared to be an axe handle. As they cautiously approached, the man was busy doing something on the table. The dim lighting cast a shadow on the tunnel walls and, combined with the music and the sound of running water, added to their increased apprehension. They pulled out their pistols. From Ron and Tom's perspective, the tunnel appeared to end with the table up against the wall, but as they got closer to the table, they noticed that the tunnel branched off to the right. A loud, deep, husky voice emitted, "It's taken you long enough. Been waiting for you guys for at least 30 years. The man raised his hands up and slowly turned toward them. His hands and face were glistening in the light. Although they didn't know what caused them to glisten, Ron and Tom got a sickening feeling in their stomachs as they gave each other a knowing glance, thinking it was blood. "On your knees," Ron commanded as he pointed his pistol at the man. "You're too late," the man told them as he was kneeling down, uttering a deep rumble of a laugh. As the man got to his knees, Tom shot him once in the head. The gunshot echoed throughout the cave. "Damn it, Tom!" "Sorry, Ron. No, I'm not sorry." Tom took a few steps closer to the table. Tom's reaction to what he saw on the table was to lean his forearm against the wall and throw up. Ron was expressionless as he stood looking at the table while the cassette player that was hanging on the wall continued to play and provide the eerie soundtrack to accompany the disturbing scene on the table. Tom, with tears in his eyes, turned toward Ron. "You hear what he said? 30 years. Yeah, maybe more than that. He's got to be in his 60s. Ron took his cell phone out and tried to make a call for assistance. Tom gave Ron a keen look. You know that ain't gonna work. Ron put his cell phone away and took a few steps away from the table as he was leaving. Ron, where are you going? We gotta get back and get some help down here. A passionate Tom confronted Ron and pleaded, I'm not leaving without her, and neither one of us are gonna stay here alone. But we can't carry her back. She's in... Tom choked up. Pieces, goddammit. She's in pieces. I'm not leaving her. Tom was insistent. He got his cell phone out and took pictures to record the crime scene before he took his shirt off and started wrapping up the girl's body parts. As Tom was placing the body parts in his shirt, Ron realized that there wouldn't be enough room, so he took his shirt off and helped. It was emotional for both of them, wrapping up fingers, toes, arms, legs, torso, and the head of a young girl. Out of the tunnel. They moved as quickly as they could, running part of the way to get out of the cave. 5 minutes on their way out, they saw flashlights up ahead and yelled out to ask who it was. It was Billy with 3 other deputies. Billy called out, The guys in the maintenance room thought they heard gunshots. You guys okay? Ron and Tom answered in the affirmative, not very enthusiastically nor convincingly. As they met in the cave, Billy knew something was wrong as Ron and Tom passed them by, continuing their jog to the exit. It took another 5 minutes to reach the maintenance room, during which time Ron and Tom explained to Billy, as best they could, what had happened. When they entered the maintenance room, Ken, Keisha, Grayson, and several other deputies along with an EMT crew were there. Ron and Tom entered the maintenance room, winded, sweating, and with blood on them. They walked to the table in the center of the room and placed the blood-soaked shirts on the table. No one said anything, knowing without asking what was in the shirts. A drained Ron and Tom stood silently by the table. Keisha and the others observed the somber scene. Keisha started to quietly cry and, being the empathetic person she was, couldn't hold back. She approached Ron and Tom, giving them hugs and whispering soothing words. Ken got everyone's attention. Well, hell. Normally the coroner would come to the crime scene, but we need to get her out of here, so you EMTs get her out of here over to the coroner's office, and you two, why don't you boys go get cleaned up? Tom didn't want to hear it. Not right now, Ken. The guy who did this is back down there. He's dead, but there's a crime scene that needs to be processed. As soon as the crime scene techs get here, we'll take them back there. Ron motioned toward Grayson. I'm assuming the FBI will be handling this. That table in the other room there with those locker boxes has some mementos this guy's been collecting for years. Grayson, a seasoned veteran with the FBI, was impatient, and after 5 minutes of waiting, he suggested moving on to the crime scene and that the crime scene techs could follow. They waited a few more minutes. Ron and Tom quietly talked, unaware or concerned that they could be overheard. Tom did his best to maintain his composure with tears in his eyes. Can't get it out of my head, Ron. I can't get it out of my head. What? Her eyes. Her eyes were open. Shit. Tom stepped away. Tom's comment was too much for Keisha and she left the room. Grayson pretended he was fine or ignored it. You guys ready to go? Back to the tunnel. Ron and Tom led the way with Grayson, Billy, and 2 other deputies following. Ken stayed behind in the maintenance room. The 15-minute walk was mainly silent, with occasional small talk. As they approached the end of the tunnel, 20 yards away, the faint appearance of the table came into view. Damn, that's creepy, Billy said, referring to the music still playing from the cassette player. The music was exceptionally slow, almost unintelligible. Naughty down. As they continued their approach, a nervous Billy got Ron's attention. Sonny and Cher. What? The song, Sonny and Cher.
Bang bang. Wasn't it just Cher? I guess she sang it, but Sonny wrote it. Anyway, Sonny and Cher. Ron smiled, momentarily forgetting why they were in the tunnel, and gave Billy an appreciative pat on the shoulder. Motherfucker! Tom screamed as he and Ron pulled their pistols. Grayson, Billy, and the deputies followed suit, pulling their pistols while asking what was wrong. The motherfucker's gone! He got a bullet in his head and he's gone! Tom told them as they approached the table area. The body was gone, and it looked like it had been dragged to a small drop-off next to the underground stream a few feet down the branch off the tunnel to the right. Their tactical instinct kicked in as they realized they were not alone. The adrenaline was pumping as the music continued to play, adding a sense of surrealism to the situation. Then, as if the music lyrics were choreographed to the action, bang, bang, gunshots rang out, the ricochets hitting the wall with a distinctive ping-ping sound. Tom was hit in the chest and fell to the ground, and one of the deputies was hit in the arm by a ricocheting bullet. Ron's reaction was instant as he returned fire and charged toward the figure that was shooting at them from inside the tunnel. Within a few seconds, he emptied his first magazine and reloaded. Ron reacted so quickly that the others could not keep up or return fire also. The shooter fell to the ground as Ron continued his approach, with Billy and the other deputies trying to keep up. In the distance, more shots came from two more figures in the dark. When Ron and the others returned fire, the two shooters ran away. Ron stopped next to the first shooter and found him to be unconscious but still alive. The shooter appeared to be a child or teenager. Ron grabbed the jacket collar the kid was wearing and dragged him back to the table area and around the corner, out of any line of sight the other shooters could still have. The shootout had been short, maybe lasting only 20 seconds. Grayson checked on Tom, who suddenly sat up yelling, "God damn it, motherfucker!" Tom was all right. The bullet had hit his vest. Ron checked the kid he had shot, who was wounded in the shoulder and chest. He opened the jacket and then ripped the shirt open to check the wounds. What? The appearance of developed breasts surprised him. It's a damn girl. She's a kid, a teenager. Damn it! Ron's distress over the girl didn't slow him down as he performed first aid while giving directions to the group. Grayson, hope you don't mind, but we're on to plan B right now. We gotta get out of here right away. Get back and regroup. Grayson was listening to Ron but was distracted as he stood by the table with the axe in it covered with blood. Tom stepped up next to Grayson and got his attention with a short tap on the shoulder. When he turned, Tom gave him a consoling look. Grayson answered Ron. Okay, let's do it. All right, there's one down. Still two more we know of, and where there's two, there's more. Always is. Ron finished patching up the girl while the wounded deputy's arm was patched up by Billy. They made a makeshift litter to carry the girl and moved out. Ron noticed that Billy was unusually quiet. Hey, Billy, what's up? Nothing. Let's get going. Plan B. They moved out and made their way to the maintenance room. They placed the girl on the paramedic stretcher and the paramedics went to work. The light of the maintenance room revealed a new impression of the girl, whose emaciated body showed malnutrition. Her head was shaved and she was black or mixed race. Ken was updated and Grayson made phone calls. Grayson told them that they were going to wait an hour or two for the forensic team and SWAT team to arrive before returning to the tunnel. Ken told Ron and Tom to leave for an hour to take a much-needed break. Ken noticed that Billy was not his usual self. Billy, you okay? Billy was reluctant to answer, his face worried. Billy, I know what happened to that little girl is gruesome and... It's not that, Ken. It's not that. I don't know how to put this. It's Ron. What about him? When that girl started shooting, Ron didn't take cover. He charged her. He just ran straight for her. He charged. Billy, that's instinct, training. When you get in a close ambush, you charge the ambush. That's your best odds of surviving. No, that's not it. I was in the Marines, I know that. But what he did was crazy.
and the look on his face. I'm sorry, something's not right. Interesting, but you of all people should know there is something not right with Ron. You grew up with him. I know, but I've just never seen him like that. It scared me. It's scared me more than being shot at. Ken gave Billy an ominous look. Believe me, there's more to Ron than you know, and I hope you never have to find out who the real Ron is, but unfortunately, you probably will one of these days. What are you talking about? I said too much already, but right now, we got work to do. 90 minutes later, the FBI forensic team and SWAT team were in the maintenance room. Ron and Tom returned wearing their tactical gear and ready to move out. Ron, Tom, Grayson, and the SWAT team held a quick meeting to review a plan of action for the tunnel before moving out. They arrived at what had already been given the distasteful name of the kill table. The forensic team went to work, and 2 SWAT team members remained with them while the rest continued forward into the tunnel that branched off to the right. Grayson observed that the string of lights that ran from City Hall ended and was not connected to the string of lights in the other tunnel, which raised the question about where the power source for these lights came from. They moved forward for 5 minutes until the tunnel ended at what would be considered a T intersection. The string of lights ended. On the wall to their front was another string of lights. To their left was a tunnel, and to the right a slight incline that ran about 10 yards to a large metal door. On the ground, they observed 2 small train track rails, the type used for the old mine carts. The rails led out from behind the door and ran past them down the tunnel to their left. They approached the door and checked it out. The 5-foot wide door was wide enough for a minecart to get through. There were not any locks, alarms, or keypads visible, only a levered door handle. A closer look at the rail revealed that it appeared to be in use since it was not rusted over and there were footprints on the ground. With a quick discussion, they created a plan to go through the door. One of the SWAT team members checked the door handle and pulled the door inward slightly, just enough to see the end of a minecart lit up by fluorescent lighting. They waited and listened. After hearing nothing, they decided to enter. The compound. They opened the door and quickly entered. They found 4 empty mine carts. The room was long and they estimated room for probably 2 more. At the far end was another doorway. They advanced to the other doorway similar to the first door with a lever handle. They repeated the procedure, opening the door slightly and again being met by fluorescent lighting. They entered the room, which was smaller. This room had concrete walls, floor, and ceiling. Both sides of the room had benches and a variety of storage containers. The rail track continued through the center of the room to a wall with another door. At the end of the room, there were regular-sized doorways on each side. They made a quick check behind each of these doors and found large shower rooms. The door leading out of this room was metal with a door handle. As they had done with the previous wide doors, they cracked the door an inch. More fluorescent lighting poured through the crack as well as the sound of music playing. The music increased the tension, indicating it was likely there was someone in the room. They opened the door the rest of the way and quietly entered the room. The entry to the room was a 3-foot-long concrete entrance separating the cave from a modern built structure, a long and wide building without windows with a tile floor, similar to a large lab or workshop. They entered and spread out, unnoticed by the 6 women working at tables on both sides of the room. The women appeared to be middle-aged. 3 were white, 1 black, 2 Native American. One of the Native American women saw them and turned off the radio as she stood up and yelled, "How'd you get in here? Who are you?" The other women stopped work and focused their attention on Grayson as he made the announcement, "FBI, all of you need to stop what you're doing." The women were surprised as one of them asked, "How'd you get in here? FBI, really? Is this some kind of a joke?" Grayson introduced himself and explained that they came in from the tunnel and were investigating the girl they found there. "Girl?" one of the other women asked, surprised. They all seemed surprised to hear of a girl in the tunnel except for the black woman,
who projected a nervousness that Grayson and the others noticed. The SWAT team members made their way through the room while Grayson addressed the woman. "Do any of you have any idea how a teenage girl got back in these tunnels?" They shook their heads and said no. One of the native women, Deb, looked pointedly at the black woman. "Monique, you have any idea?" "Why is that?" Grayson asked. "Her husband, Bobby. He owns the place." Everyone noticed Monique get increasingly nervous. Two of the SWAT team members wasted no time in approaching Monique. The female SWAT team member patted her down. "Gun!" she exclaimed. Some of the other women gasped, shocked that Monique carried a gun. The pistol was removed from her waistband that was concealed by the flannel shirt she was wearing, and then the agent placed her in handcuffs and had her sit. The rest of the women were given pat-downs as Grayson asked the women if there were any other guns. They answered no. The women bitterly asked Monique why she had a gun. Grayson interrupted and asked about the room and what was going on. The women took turns, except for Monique, telling Grayson about their jobs to process minerals from the mine. They had worked there for years. Two had been there for 20 years and the others 15 to 20 years except for Monique. She was in her 30s and had worked there 15 years. They worked 3 days a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday from 7 a.m. to 1 p.m., and it was their understanding that work crews came in at 2 p.m. that did the mining in the caves and deposited the mine carts for them to work on. Grayson had one of the SWAT team members collect cell phones. Deb got Grayson's attention and said with a smile, "I'm sorry, this doesn't make sense. Why would the FBI investigating a girl in the cave?" "You would be right. There's a lot that doesn't make sense, but it wasn't just a girl in the cave. That girl and 2 others shot at deputies." "Shooting?" one of the women screamed. "Yes, a young girl shot at deputies in the cave and hit 2 of them." "No, she all right?" Monique cried out as she stood up. "She was shot and is in the hospital." "No!" Monique started to cry and shake. Tom approached Monique. "I see a resemblance. Is this girl your daughter?" "You seen her? Is she all right?" Her reaction made it clear that the girl was her daughter. While still crying, she yelled out that she was sorry and began rambling at Tom. "I'm assuming you know more about those 2 other shooters. Are there more?" Oh God, I'm sorry. "What's going on here? You need to calm down. Tell us what's going on. Got more people outside in the cave. Are they in danger?" "Is my daughter all right? Please tell me." Ron yelled across the room. "She's going to be okay. I just got off the phone with the hospital." Monique expressed relief as she looked at the clock on the wall, 12:50. She was nervous and overly excited and started talking. "We usually leave at 1 o'clock and they come out of the cave at 2 for shift change, so your folks need to be out of there when they come in." "Why didn't they come tell you what happened?" "They were probably scared. Thought they'd get in trouble because they're not allowed to come in here. They've never come past that door. In the other room you came in from, they go through the shower rooms and then exit from there to the houses outside." "How many are in there now?" 12, but my daughter's not there, 11. They work 4-hour shifts, come out from the cave at 2, and then at 2:30, the other group goes into the cave to work. There's 14 or 15 on the second shift." "Hold on," one of the other women yelled out. "Your daughter works in there? Why? It's starting to sound like kids are in there. Is that it, Monique?" All the women waited for an answer. Monique's expression confirmed it was true. Another woman yelled at Monique. "Kids? We've always thought late afternoon and night crews work the mine. Men, not kids. What the hell, Monique?" Tom put his attention back to Monique while the women brooded. "Monique, 2 of them have guns, plus your daughter. So that's 3 guns. Any more?" 3 guns. That's right. But they don't bring them in here. They leave them in the bin in the outer room and then go into the shower before going home." "Where's home?" "Next door," Monique replied, pointing to the right. "The house outside there. The entrance is through the shower room. That group leaving through the mines lives in the house out there to the right,
and then the afternoon crew will be coming in from the house out on the left. You keep saying crew, so let's be clear. They're kids, right? Monique didn't answer. Grayson and the others were disturbed hearing this story about kids being used as slave labor for the mine. Monique kept talking. They all live here. There's 2 houses, one on each side. From the cave, they come into the outer room, put the guns away, open the door, and head into the shower room, get cleaned up, and then they go into the house. Monique got more nervous as she spoke. One of the SWAT members asked her about the camera in the corners of the ceiling. Oh, shit. God, those are from the house. Bobby, he probably knows you're here. Her nervous talkativeness switched to terror. Ron asked, Where are we at? Where is this place? Deb answered, Black Road, into Black Road, just half mile out of town. Bobby Black's place is outside out front there. Ron and Grayson got on their phones to give updates and request for additional help and backup. Does Bobby have guns? Oh, yeah. Lots, Monique answered confidently. Monique noticed the other women were giving her looks of disgust. Deb questioned her about what she had been doing and asking how she could have been doing it all these years. Monique gave a tearful reply. My baby. Grayson instructed the SWAT team to go out front as he finished an update on the phone. Ron walked toward the front door, and as he passed by Tom, he stopped him. Ron, what's going on with you? What do you mean? You're acting really strange. Something's up. Nothing. It's just, kids. Understand, but still, man, I've known you a long time, and you are being really weird. Ron broke off the conversation and headed to the front door. Tom and Grayson followed with 3 of the SWAT members, while 2 remained in the room watching the women. Outside the front door, there was a large paved parking lot, a large wooden gate, and concrete walls 10 feet high that stretched left and right for about a football field's length in both directions. They approached the gate, and within the walls, to the left and right, they saw the 2 large houses that Monique was talking about. From the gate, a dirt road led about 100 yards to a house next to Black Road. One of the SWAT members yelled out, We got activity to the front. A husky, bearded black man, who they assumed was Bobby Black, was aggressively walking up the dirt road. Gun, right hand, someone yelled. Everyone started to spread out as Bobby Black continued to march toward them. He was yelling, Get off my property! This is private property! Get off my property! Grayson made attempts to identify himself, but Black continued to yell as he approached. Tom also made attempts to talk with Black and tell him they only wanted to ask questions. Tom repeatedly asked him to drop the pistol on the ground. Black did not comply as he continued toward them. A couple of SWAT members took a knee as everyone else maintained their distance from one another. Tom made desperate attempts to convince Black to stop and drop his pistol. The SWAT team leader, Ed, was next to Tom and instructed everyone, If it needs to happen, I will take the shot, all right? The other SWAT team members answered as Black continued to get closer. Tom continued his pleas with Black with no success. The limited exchange of Tom attempting to convince Black to drop his pistol continued as Black ranted until he was 15 yards away and began to raise his pistol. Ed fired 2 shots, hitting Black's right shoulder and knocking him to the ground. As Tom and the others advanced toward Black, Tom saw him reaching inside his jacket. Tom turned away from Black and ran screaming, Grenade! Grenade! Everyone turned, ran, and hit the ground as Ed, hoping to prevent Black from throwing the grenade, took aim and shot Black in the head. Ed hit the ground and yelled out to everyone to stay down. 10 seconds later, the grenade exploded. Everyone got up and dusted themselves off as Ed asked if everyone was all right. No one was hurt. Ron walked over to Tom, smiling, and gave him a pat on the back. That was fun, just like old times. Yeah, man, old times. I still think you're acting weird, Tom told Ron as he laughed. The 2 women ran out of Black's house screaming and started running toward Black's body. The SWAT team ran past Black's body toward the women, and before they could get close to the body, restrained them. Grayson ordered the SWAT team to check the house. They made the check and found the house was empty.
Grayson, Ron, and Tom went back into the workshop. As they entered, Monique asked, "Is he all right?" Tom sarcastically answered, "No, he's not all right. He blew himself up." Monique's reaction was unexpected. She smiled and appeared to be relieved. "Who are those other two women down at the house?" "They would be Bobby's other wives." "So, Bobby had 3 wives?" "Oh no, there's one more." The discovery of a 4th wife sparked more questions. As the questioning continued, they learned that the 4th wife and Bobby's son, Bobby Jr., were on the road doing what had been done for years, looking for children and bringing them back here to work. Several deputies entered the room, and Grayson asked them to take the other women to the sheriff's station. Grayson and Tom continued to ask Monique questions. It started in 1975. Monique proceeded to tell them how it all started, how the history of the mine went back 100 years and had an unusual business arrangement. The mine and the property was on native land, but was owned by a black man, William Black. The mining company was not allowed to buy the land and had made an arrangement to lease the land. The mine was not a full-scale mine, and mining was trucked out to the larger facility in Fredericksburg, Missouri. In the 1970s, mining was scaled back, but there was a 100-year lease agreed to in 1950. The mine shut down in 1975, and the mining company stopped paying on the lease. Bobby's dad took them to court and got a settlement. With the mine closed, Bobby's dad saw an opportunity to run small-scale mineral mining. At some point, he started using children as labor, which Bobby continued. Over the years, children were abducted and forced into working in the mine. Some of the children were Bobby's or children of the teenage boys, which Bobby put a stop to. He figured it was too difficult taking care of babies. They stopped getting boys, and the ones they did get, Bobby got rid of them when they were around 10. The story was unsettling, to say the least. Grayson, Tom, and Ron were upset. However, Ron's reaction was more intense. Kids have been down in that tunnel working the mines from the 70s, 80s, up to today? Well, yes. Why do you have your daughter working down there? It's the only option. They all work in the mine. The only outsiders are those women working in here, and they don't know anything about it. It was kind of a perfect operation. Perfect? Ron yelled. What is wrong with you? Grayson interjected. Monique, tell us something. All these kids over the years, where are they now? Monique teared up, reluctant to say anything, fear on her face. Believe me, I'm telling you the truth. I never knew what happened. I grew up here in that house, there on the right from the time I was, I think, 5 or 6. When I was a teenager, Bobby took a liking to me. And the way he explained it to us was when we reached 13 or 14 years of age, we'd be let go. I was 14 when I got pregnant with Monique. Then one day he came and got me and said they were going to let me go. He took me outside and walked me out front through the parking lot, past the house on the other side to another building on the side over there. Have you been over there yet? She asked in an ominous manner. No, we haven't, Grayson answered. He took me into the building. It was strange. Mrs. Black, Beverly, she was in there. They told me to lie down on this table, and I started to get scared, but they threw me up there and tied me down. I was scared to death. Bobby looked down at me and had this really strange look on his face, and he said, I promised, like I promised you and all the others, when you reaches an age, it's time to go. And you're going. I started screaming. I was terrified. And he started rolling the table across the room. I heard this noise, a really loud rumbling noise like a clothes dryer. The table banged up against something and I felt this heat and saw light. I looked down at my feet and there were flames. A furnace. Oh, God. Grayson said under his breath. Monique was uncontrollably crying and hysterical at this point of her story. I screamed, begged, but it didn't help. Beverly was doing something with the furnace, and I just blurted out, "What about my baby?" And with that, they both stopped what they were doing and looked at me. I hadn't told them yet I was pregnant, but that saved me. How many? Ron asked. What? How many? How many? I'm sorry. Monique sobbed. How many have there been? Grayson asked. Since then, it's been 15 years. All of them. When they turned 12 or 13, all of them. How many? Monique thought about it, calculating over 15 years. I guess 5 or 6 a year. These past 5 years, we haven't had as many. We used to have 20 to 30 in each house, but these last 5 years, they haven't been bringing in as many. I'm not sure how many they're going to have today. Today? Grayson asked. Bobby Jr. and Molly, they usually call Bobby when they've got a few kids and are on the way back. Grayson and Tom continued to ask questions and get more details until Ron abruptly interrupted. 150. 150. And that's just these past 15 years, and before that, another 15 or more years they were doing this. We're talking 30 years since the 70s. We're talking, what, 300 kids? Ron was losing control, and it was clear to Grayson and Tom he was on the verge of getting violent with Monique. Tom grabbed a hold of Ron and walked with him out of the building. Damn it, Ron, get a grip. Sorry, it's just... Ron paced the parking lot. Sorry, I have to get out of here. Ron walked out of the gate and down the road toward the house. Tom walked back inside and told Grayson that Ron had left. Grayson seemed sympathetic with Ron's emotions. Tom offered to take Monique into custody and take her to the sheriff's station. Emotional reactions. Ron got a ride back to his cruiser at City Hall. He experienced a rush of emotions and frustration with the events of the day. He drove back to the sheriff's station and pulled into the parking lot at the side of the building. He got out of his cruiser and, right on cue, was greeted by Rose. He couldn't help but chuckle. You all right, Ron? Not really, but you probably already know that, don't you? Ron replied with a little sarcasm. Busy day for you, but at least now you know why I scared Laura in the cave. That night when they were down there, that man was out there butchering another kid. If Laura went left instead of right that night, no telling. Ron had a moment of appreciation as he realized that Rose may have saved Laura's life. Thank you, Rose. Ron was emotional and teary-eyed. Oh, Ron, don't thank me yet, she told him as she walked away with her usual cynical laugh. Ron went inside and found a group of FBI agents and Sheriff Department's detectives in the conference room. He was greeted by Ken. You all right, Ron? I'm good. Looks like we've got another shit show. Ken asked Ron for an update and then ranted about all the events that had happened in the past 4 weeks and complained about how the media would be all over the town again. Ken was right. As they glanced out the window, a news van pulled up. Ken received a call from Grayson. His superiors insisted on a press conference at 6 o'clock at the sheriff's station. Over the next several hours, Grayson and other FBI agents conducted interviews with Monique and the other wives who were cooperating. Bobby Jr. and Molly were arrested on the way back into town. They had 3 children with them in an RV. The details of the interviews revealed that William Black had used child labor starting in the late 70s until his death in 1984. Bobby Black took over and explained the number of children being used. His son and one of the wives would go on road trips in the recreational vehicle and find children. They did this every couple of months. They never took kids in Missouri and went cross-country. Their best estimate included about 10 to 15 kids a year over the 30-plus years. Although the wives were cooperating with Grayson, They didn't express remorse and displayed a sense of pride in their accomplishment and ability to go undetected. Monique's visit to the incinerator building was the only time she had been there and was never invited or participated in killing any of the children. Monique truly believed that Bobby was going to let her and her daughter go. Throughout the afternoon, FBI and state crime scene technicians and investigators overran the Black House and property of the compound, along with the maintenance room and tunnel that led from City Hall. The sheriff's station conference room and interview rooms were filled with FBI agents and their equipment. It was a repeat of the scene from 4 weeks earlier from the Holcomb farm, although this was a much larger scale. The 23 children rescued from the compound were taken to the hospital to be evaluated. Press conference. Grayson held the press conference outside the sheriff's station and made a statement about the Amber Alert, the discovery of the serial killer, and how it led to the discovery of the mining compound and use of child labor. After the press conference, Grayson asked everyone to gather in Ken's office. All right, you probably heard the short press conference, so I didn't provide too many details. The thing I want to clarify here is that the details of this case are not to be repeated because some of this information we're not going to tell the public. This case is too gruesome, grotesque. A lot of it's not going to be told to the public, especially the numbers. We can't just go blurting out that these people kidnapped and incinerated 300 kids. 300? Keisha asked doubtfully. Grayson's voice cracked and projected a nervousness as he spoke. At least 300. They did this for 30 years, and although they scaled back the last 5 years or so before that, they had anywhere from 30 to 50 kids in there every year. This whole thing is just too insane to even comprehend or process. I know this is emotional, but we gotta keep our shit together and we've gotta keep it contained. What the hell? Keisha yelled, reacting to a breaking news flash on the wall television. Breaking news. Missouri massacre continues. Another serial killer in Farmerville. I know. I keep asking what next? What next? Is it never gonna stop? Hey, Ken, what is it with this town? Another interview. Grayson had a couple more questions for Monique, and it brought her into an interview room. He asked her if she knew anything about the serial killer in the cave. It was evident by Monique's reaction that she knew something but hesitated to say anything. But Grayson was persistent. Yes, we knew about that guy, but Bobby never mentioned it. However, Bev and the other wives told me how the guy grabbed one of the mining kids. This was like 20 years ago. A month later, it happened again. Bobby and his younger brother searched the caves for the kid and came across the guy. Bobby's brother got killed, and the way Bev explained it, Bobby and that guy came to an arrangement to leave each other alone, and I guess it's been that way ever since. When Grayson left the room, Ken and the others noticed he was visibly upset. Ken asked him if he was all right. They knew about that serial killer 20 years ago. His statement cast a net of uneasiness over the room. Ron was more disturbed than the others and angrily left the station. Grumblings. Laura and Danny were in her bedroom doing homework when a news alert came across their phones. They went to the living room and turned the television on. Mom, have you seen the news? Kelly walked into the living room checking her phone when she was distracted by the newscast announcer introducing breaking news with a headline. Another serial killer and child labor found in Farmerville, Missouri. Laura frantically scrolled through her phone looking for more details. Have you heard from Dad? No, Kelly answered as she tried calling Ron on the phone. He didn't answer nor reply to her texts. Laura looked at a distracted Kelly. Mom, you okay? I'm all right. This is bad news. This is fucked up, Mom. Like we said this morning about this town.
We should have never moved here. Laura. No, Mom, this shit with the Holcombs last month, that asshole Sean dying at the cave, Danny's dad, O'Malley being a child molester, that serial killer they caught today, they're saying this guy worked at City Hall and had a tunnel that led to the caves, and he's been doing it for years, and it was only because they found him that they found those kids working in the mines. This is stupid crazy, Mom. Kids? Yeah, Mom, this shit with the mine and those kids. Sounds like they've been doing that out there for years. How many kids would that be? 100? 200? Kelly became distracted, texting Ron. Mom, are you listening? Yeah, trying to contact your dad and see what's going on. Damn, Mom, I just told you what's going on. God, this is crazy, this town. There's just something wrong with it. It's really got to be cursed. There was something about the mine story that bothered Kelly as she did her best to keep her composure. She tried her best to calm Laura down without any success. Danny grabbed Laura's hand. There is one good thing about you moving here. You met me. Laura smiled, hugged Danny, whispered in his ear, and they headed to the door. See you later, Mom. Laura drove them to a secluded spot where they parked and started to make out. The makeout session progressed to Laura straddling Danny. A minute later, he smiled and laughed a little. What? What's so funny? You like to have sex when you're upset. Shut up. Just shut up. Love you. Love you too. Just shut up. Ron arrived home around 8 o'clock. Kelly greeted him with a hug and asked if he was all right. Ron didn't feel like talking and brooded for the next hour until Kelly confronted him. I know you said you're all right, but are you? I am. Just a long day. Me and Tom found that sick fuck. I've never seen anything like that. He chopped her up in little pieces, and then later, that kid shooting at us and finding out about all those kids over the years. Ron was agitated as he animatedly continued, Oh yeah, and then there's the hand grenade. Hand grenade? Yeah, the guy tried to shoot us and then throw a hand grenade at us, but blew himself up instead, which was funny as shit. Kelly knew Ron was unusually upset, and something was off as she tried to cheer him up. Remember we used to hang out in the caves? We had fun, didn't we? Yeah, I remember. Lots of fun. We used to fool around in the cave, and it was fun. And I know there was that one time when those kids caught us in there, but still, we had fun. What kids? What kids? Really? Babe, I don't understand you sometimes when you act like you don't remember things. Kelly, we were down there 25 years ago, and they've been doing that out there since before then. That's probably 150 to 200 kids since we've been out there. What? How many? Ron was getting more agitated and angry. That's 25 years, and they've been doing it maybe 30 years or more, so we figured about 300 kids they've kidnapped and burned to death. Kelly let out an unsympathetic snort. That's a lot. Yes, that's a lot, and it's not funny, Ron told her with scorn. Kelly was incensed. You act like you didn't know those kids were in that cave. What do you mean? What do I mean? Are you kidding? You've always known those kids were there, damn it. Why did you do this? Pretend to forget things, suppress memories. You knew, we both knew, kids were in there. And remember, we even killed a couple of them. Ron angrily snapped back. That was self-defense. Oh, now you remember. Yeah, I remember. But if we had told somebody, hundreds of kids would have never been kidnapped and burned in that furnace. I can't help but wonder if we should have told somebody. Kelly glared at Ron in anger. Well, fuck, Ron. We didn't. Kelly let out an angry grunt, grabbed her keys, and headed to the front door. Where are you going? I need some air. Going for a ride. Kelly slammed the front door on her way out. Half a minute later, Kelly opened the door. Ron! What? Damn, babe, come on. Let's go for a ride.
To be continued in the final 3 episodes.
And that concludes tonight's harrowing journey into Farmerville. With every revelation, the mysteries deepen and the terror intensifies. Thanks again to the amazingly talented Marty Martin for allowing us to bring his epic saga to life. If you've been captivated by this chilling tale, be sure to catch up on parts 1 through 5 in our earlier episodes, and tune in next Monday for episode number 333, where we'll feature the remaining installments, parts 8 through 10, to bring this haunting saga to its gripping, satisfying conclusion. If you can't wait, you can search for Marty Martin on Amazon, where you'll find his profile and his books for sale, including his debut historical fiction piece, Forgotten Soldiers: What Happened to Jacob Walden. You can also check out his children's book series, Adventures with Pop-Pop, based on his experiences with his grandchildren. If that's not your thing, no worries. He's hard at work on some new mysteries and thrillers too, so stay tuned. Well, that's it for tonight, friends. Thank you for joining us on yet another unsettling journey into the shadows. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, remember to leave us a 5-star review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening. And if you're on YouTube, give this video a thumbs up, leave us a comment, and hit that subscribe button and bell icon. It means a lot to us and helps us more than you could imagine. For those who want even more chilling content, visit chillingtalesfordarknights.com to become a patron. For just $7.99 per month or less with an annual subscription, you'll gain exclusive access to ad-free episodes and bonus content. Every penny goes towards keeping the nightmares alive and bringing you more tales of terror each week. I'm your host, Steve Taylor, and as always, it's been a pleasure to guide you through the darkness. Tune in next Monday for more tales to terrify, where we'll once again turn off the lights and turn on the dark. Until then, sweet dreams, listener. Sweet dreams.
Chilling tales for dark nights.